We are back! We are back! We're so back in action! We're going to get Doug back today! We are back! We are back! We are back! We are back! Back! We are back! Back in action! Back! We are back! We're back! What are we? We're back! We're back!
Let's go! And we are back! Coming at you live from just the basement, not the basement of the basement of WCPT 820 in Chicago. This is the Sports Cubicle, where the inmates are running the asylum. And the boss, he's going to yell at us on Monday morning because we're working overtime. And you're probably going right now going, it's 4 o'clock on a Sunday. Where the hell is the family meeting? Don't worry. We're not taking their show. We're not taking their time. They'll be back in 2 weeks. They're taking some time off for the holidays. So Eric Grant and the good folks at WCPT decided to let us, hey, let's have our show on. Now, normally you can hear us at 9 p.m. on Sunday nights, but we're going to be on this week and next week. This is a twice-in-a-lifetime experience, guys, so you're going to make sure you want to miss it. Make sure you don't want to miss this. We got our esteemed panel here. This is the fastest 2 hours in sports talk radio, so let's get right down to it. Now, this guy got us out of the basement of the basement. He was attacked by a leopard. I didn't know they had security guards like that. He's the marvelous one, Dan Marver. What's up, Marver?
Well, I'm calling from my palatial estate, as I've been banned for excess.
But you are the hero.
Because I've been fully vaccinated. I've got the booster. I'm fully masked, and that's all I'm going to say.
Marver, you are our hero. Not only did you kill that leopard, you made it so we had a good Christmas leopard instead of that good Christmas rat I was going to cook for all of us. And, of course, sitting to my left, he's the guy you saw last week. He's the Paul Chivari. I don't have a nickname for you yet after 2 years of working here.
I thought I was the Paulacious one.
Yeah, Paulacious one. But
Did I lose my nickname?
Your nickname's been changing left and right. You know, I think Christian Simpson, who will be a guest later, called you Mr. I can't remember what weird nickname.
Professor Buckets.
Professor Buckets. Yeah. And you just heard the voice. He's the star of our show. He's the magnificent Mike Mercado, the magnificent one.
I don't know about that. It just this show's off the rails already, and we just started. Merry Christmas, everybody! Thank you for joining us on your holidays, everybody. I'm the Sports Cubicle, and no better place to do it than here in Chicago instead of watching the Bears game.
Well, make sure if you are watching the Bears game, turn the volume down and keep us on in the background. We'll be covering this Bears game the entire show because let's be real here, it's got another hour or two.
And for those of you listening to the Bears game and overshot it on the dial, stay here.
And, of course, you can call us at 773-763-9270. If you want to talk Chicago Bears, you want to talk anything, we are here for you. Now, let's just talk about this. We're placing the Seahawks. The quarterback we all wanted last year. And, I mean, if Russell Wilson beats us, is that just going to be, insult to injury?
I don't know. I think this is the funny thing because you sent us this interesting article that came out just this past week as we were leading to Seattle and Chicago in the Northwest. But I guess at the end of the day, how excited would you have been knowing how this Bears season has played out if Russell Wilson would have ended up in the Bears? Knowing what we know now, how this Bears season has ended up, how empathetic has it been? Thinking about that they had themselves a star rookie coming in and how much they bungled it from training camp on. Have you guys ever seen a season that wasn't just bad, they're a bad team, but almost boring? They're in molasses. That's what's upsetting me right now about this Bears game.
I don't know. I just think if Wilson was on the Bears this season, it's not like they would have improved the offensive line. So he probably would have been injured at some point in the season. So we've got our Russell Wilson, and that's going to be hopefully Justin Fields. And that's hopefully maybe he grew this year enough to be a better quarterback next year once they start putting pieces around him. And
that is a good thing because Justin Fields, he's still got a lot to learn. A lot of people are saying he could be the next Russell Wilson here. And I'm not fully sure about that. We need to see what's going on here. But as I preach, it's the coaching staff that needs to change. But Marver, what were your thoughts on, what we could have gotten versus what we have right now?
Well, I think that in the long term, we're better off with Fields because, in 5 years, he'll hopefully be what we hope he is right now, but it will take time. But the thing that's weird about this game is I'm having a hard time watching it because my screen is covered with snow in Seattle, and I don't understand that.
It is currently 14-7 Seattle, guys, right now, and I'm pretty bummed, guys. Marver, yes?
Yeah, I was going to say, but in this particular game, we have the great Nick Foles at quarterback.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because yesterday was Christmas, and my Uncle Kevin, he got me a really nice Justin Fields jersey. And I can't wear that today. Nick Foles is playing. And I couldn't find my $7 Nick Foles Bears t-shirt I bought last year. And who wants to weigh on this? Because I don't know why they're putting him in over Andy Dalton, who just got back from the COVID list. I mean, I get not starting Fields if he is injured. Don't RG3 him. Don't ruin your franchise. But why is Nick Foles coming in? Is this just get your money's worth day?
It's because I think Matt Nagy's going out on a limb here and his one last shot at staying coach of this team. I think he's going to ride with Nick Foles these last 2 weeks. Guys, I don't know if you're aware of the Ian Rappaport report from today, where he was saying that basically the Bears might be trying to take advantage of a loophole in the NFL rules that says that they can interview head coaching candidates in the last 2 weeks of the regular season. They would just have to fire Matt Nagy first, and Monday morning would be a perfect opportunity. So Rappaport was saying that if the Seahawks beat the Bears today, there's a chance that the Bears will probably fire Matt Nagy.
And remember, the new rule because of the CBA that they're trying out this year is also, he doesn't even have to get fired and be out of the office. He needs to be made aware of that his services will no longer even be needed. So it's also one of these things where they might put him in a lame duck position, which he's been all season. Say what you will about Matt Nagy. One of the things that's most frustrating about it when it comes to the front office is they have put their guy out there to dry. They did hang him out there. They had him that entire week when we weren't sure. They were moving coaches, interviews, and it's an embarrassment, the fact that we're at this point and you're seeing what's going on with the McCaskies and Ted Phillips. And at this point, if you're a candidate, mind you, this is a charter franchise, but are you ecstatic about coming to this organization knowing how your GM was willing to kind of move away from the guy that he was attached to the hip with? And this ownership was willing to let you just go to the wolves, and slaughter. And I think at this point, if you're a candidate, what are you excited about with this Bears team? Justin Fields? David Montgomery? Does the ownership get you excited? Like, if you're Brian Leftwich, aren't you more excited about going to Jacksonville? Which actually, one of our guests exclusively on our digital content mentioned, if you're someone like Brian Leftwich, are you ecstatic about going anywhere other than Jacksonville? That's very specific.
It's because Leftwich was with Jacksonville for a while, right. And I think was he even he was coaching the Buccaneers right now, isn't he?
He's Tom Brady's OC. So, Marver, watching all the Bears games that you've watched, let me ask you this. If you were a potential candidate for the head coaching job, the way that the Bears front office and the ownership handled everything with Matt Nagy and the uncertainty of Ryan Pace not having a typical football operationals man up there, do you think that this is going to be a big landing spot come as early as after today's game?
No, I do not. I do think, however, that their best bet might be to get a college coach. I mean, a Ryan Day, but that's a long shot. But I like him from the standpoint that he worked with Fields all those years at Ohio State, but I don't know if we can get him. But I do think that it's going to be a problem luring somebody here. But then again, money talks, and somebody can get a big increase in pay who's a coordinator. They may go for it just to fall under the bus, so to speak.
Well, next year we won't have Andy Dalton's $18 million, so that'll definitely clear up some cap space, and maybe we could throw some money at a nice coach. But, Marver, I'm going to play devil's advocate here, as I actually do agree with you. But, prime example is Urban Meyer. How often do college coaches, truly work in the NFL?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm trying to think of one right now that comes to mind. And
Pete Carroll,
they haven't had a great. Yeah.
Pete Carroll was an NFL coach before he was a college coach. So, do we count something like that?
But Pete Carroll coached differently at USC than he did most typical Urban Meyers and some of these other Nick Sabans, where it's much more demonstrative how they did it than, let's say, someone like a Pete Carroll.
But I think Pete Carroll even said that USC kind of taught him a little bit of how to get back to the NFL because it was such a disaster. I think he was with either the Jets or the Bengals or both when he was in the NFL in the 90s, and it was just awful.
This is something for the entire listener group, whether you're here normally for the family meeting, you're just sticking around for some sports talk, or here joining us an earlier edition of the Sports Cubicle. What would excite you when it comes to a head coaching position? Because I think this is one thing that the NFL does wrong, and they overcorrect way too often. They try to lean one way or the other depending on the spectrum that they were heading into the losing season. So if you had a bad defense, you're usually going to go find a defensive-minded head coach, and vice versa. You have a bad offense, you're going to find an offensive head coach. So right now, you know that you feel like Justin Fields is your guy. So you're going to try to overcorrect and find somebody that's going to try to get the best out of him. But is that the proper way to do this? Do you need somebody who's so focus-minded on one thing, or do you need somebody who's going to be much more multi-purpose? Somebody who's been in different meeting rooms? I don't know, Marver, we'll start with you and we'll go around the roundtable on this one, but I mean, what are you looking for when it comes to the correction that this Bears team is going to do? Do you want them? I mean, you've shown your interest in somebody like Ryan Day, but more of a philosophy. What are you looking for to correct what's going on in this Bears team, taking away that we can't really do much with management and ownership?
It would be nice if we had somebody with a track record of success. That would be a good starting point. I'd rather have a veteran than a first-time coach, honestly, because a first-timer in the NFL, because we've gone that route with the current coach, and they've gone that route with like Fox and others about existing coaches. But I'd like to see some kind of fresh approach, somebody maybe we haven't thought of, because Leftwich would be an idea, but I don't know. I'm not sure of his credentials, because he's benefited from where he is right now as the offensive coordinator. He may be taking orders from Brady for all we know.
Devin, what are you looking for?
Well, I want to say, Mercado, it definitely makes sense. Get a coach who's all around. But let's take a look at some of these teams like the Patriots, the Buccaneers, Bill Belichick, Bruce Aaron. Do they think they give a real you-know-what about the defense? They have been so offense-heavy that they've been able to make it work. I think other than Tony Dungy, I'm having a real hard time thinking of a guy who was at an overall perfect team on offense and defense. And I don't know, you guys are all older than me. You can probably correct me and, make me out to be the little kid here that I am. But definitely it shows if you can get a coach who knows what they're doing with offense and can bring the best out of a guy, like an Andy Reid, which, we're not going to get someone like Andy Reid, but we can get something really close.
And Paulie, we'll go to you on this just in a second, but I think what you're looking for is somebody like, let's say Jimmy Johnson. We went from the University of Miami to Dallas. Mind you, it's a different time.
There's a good example.
And he talked about it in it, though, when he said this to Dave Wannstedt. Wanney here in Chicago, beloved figure, didn't win much, but like a beloved defensive coordinator and somebody who won in Dallas.
They won together in Dallas, yeah.
And he told Wanney basically that you're the head coach. It's not your job. You find an offensive coordinator to run the offense. You run a defensive coordinator to run the defense. You are the CEO. You're the main guy. And how many times have we seen Matt Nagy head face right into that big Denny's-style menu over and over again? Paulie, if you were a Bears fan, what are you looking for? And you as a Bears fan.
I give it more Waffle House for starters. More a little syrup on there still. But you bring up a great point, Mike, about how it's not so much you go and get the offense guy or the defense guy, and how, I was saying how the pendulum swings. Does it swing back to a defensive guy? You just ultimately need a manager, just someone that could just manage the whole thing and implement his style and his system. And you're looking for a veteran, but what veterans are available, and what are what experience are you willing to forgive in the past and try and give a second chance to, like maybe Josh McDaniels. I keep throwing that name out because he's supposed to be an offensive guru. But what about like Jim Caldwell, even though he's on the older side at 66 years old? These are a couple of names here, but of course there's always the college route, and no matter what, it's going to be a risk, no matter what they take.
I think the Jim Caldwell one is really interesting, and especially because what happened in Detroit. Detroit was trying to do the Lovie Smith thing. Lovie Smith got fired at 10-6. So it's not like we've seen, just because you've been fired, that you were doing a bad job. Organizations make bad moves. And this is one thing that I think worries a lot of Bears fans, whether they're listening to us here or whether they're listening to us digitally, whatever the case is. I think Bears fans are worried that they can't trust this organization to make the proper moves. And I think if you're looking at today's NFL where you see upsets all the time, like the Houston Texans beating the Chargers. But if you're a Chargers fan, you're sitting there still, we lost a bad game. Anybody's going to lose in the NFL. We've seen it all season. The more we know, the less we know in the NFL. But you still feel better knowing that they've made the right moves, getting themselves a coach that's going to get the best out of Justin Herbert, that they're getting the right type of skilled position players. Whether it works out because you're in a division with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. But that's the point. How much trust are you willing to put into your organization? And if you're the Bears, you're right there with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And that is not okay. That is not acceptable. And it is the truth on airwaves that nobody's going to dispute.
Yeah, not for a charter franchise. That's not good. They should have a lot of history at this point of making the playoffs several times. Only one Super Bowl in 55 years of the Super Bowl.
Unacceptable.
After years of NFL championships.
Went up north, and I hate doing the very stereotypical up north argument, but we just saw it on primetime television against the Cleveland Browns. Their second quarterback with over 400 touchdowns, back to back. Like, that is unacceptable if you're a Bears fan. And I know Marver and I have talked about it on the digital version of the show about how frustrating it is, but somebody like you, Devin, who's been on this bandwagon early about we got to move on. And it wasn't just Nagy. You were on the Ryan Pace thing, too. We had a digital exclusive interview with Mike Pendleton, who is now covering the Bears and one of the better MMA experts. And he thought Ryan Pace has kind of earned one more opportunity because of some of the late round scouting. While I think his scouting is very well, especially later on the rounds, this is the same GM that has allocated money horribly, has deferred money horribly. And if you look at where all that money is, I mean, it's not even playing right now. A lot of these guys are in the quarterback room, in the tight end room. So now that we're at this point, Devin, that they are going to fire people, what are your excitement levels? How are you feeling knowing that this is actually going to happen and we're heading into that realm?
I mean, I've been saying, of course, I'm on my Fire Everyone t-shirt, laundry day. But changes need to be made. But as I've been saying, think of the last time the Bears had a rookie quarterback they developed. I can't think of it. And as you talk about it, they, up north, they've had 2 quarterbacks for the past, 25 years now, almost 30. We've had probably 30 quarterbacks in the past, 40, 30 years. This is just ridiculous here. It's and unless we're going to start signing veterans to 2-year contracts here, I don't see really much of a thing unless we get a guy who can develop young kids. And I'm with Marver here. Maybe some, college coach, especially from, Ohio State that worked with Justin Fields could do it. But then again, Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence, that didn't translate to the NFL. But again, my big gripe is unless you get a guy who knows how to develop a guy like Justin Fields, you better hope Tom Brady wants to play another year and wants to leave Tampa Bay, because I don't know what it's going to take for this team.
This franchise developed a rookie quarterback that got us to the Super Bowl, Rex Grossman.
Sexy Rexy.
Marver, if you had to take a guess right now, and knowing what we've just been talking about, are you, and we've already mentioned how nobody's excited about this new searching that they're going to be doing because nobody trusts in them, but is there any glimpse of hope because of guys like Justin Fields, because of Darnell Mooney, because of David Montgomery, because of Khalil Herbert, because of Roquan Smith? With the talent on the field, should Bears fans have any glimmer of hope that if they find the right guy, they can have a quick enough turnaround, knowing that the NFL is all about from first to last and last to first?
Right. Well, that's the thing. No matter who the coach is, the players are the ones that are going to be the key to the whole thing. I mean, you could have a better version of Nagy with Doug Peterson, for example. I mean, I'd like to maybe see him take Nathaniel Hackett, the OC for the Packers, steal him away or something like that. There's a lot of good guys out there. Brian Daboll, who's with the Buffalo club. I mean, there's a lot of candidates. Kellen Moore, for example, with that Dallas. So there's a lot of guys that might be interested. Eric Bieniemy, for example, has been talked about. There's so many different people that could be possible, or even a Matt Campbell. So, it was a college guy, Iowa State. But honestly, to me, I think that it goes deeper than the coach. I mean, they've got to get a team, a better team, better players than they have right now, because that's going to be the issue. I mean, believe it or not, they've beaten 3 teams this year, haven't they? The Raiders, the Bengals, and the Lions. I mean, and so they're capable of beating playoff team like the Bengals. So, I mean, on a given day, maybe they do have the skill set. So I don't know what, I'm not smart enough to know what exactly the secret formula is, whether it's the coach or they need better players or perhaps a whole new management team, which I would probably advocate altogether. So, I mean, what do you guys think about the team? The team that we have, is that a playoff caliber team right now?
I don't think the roster is anywhere near a playoff team, and we're seeing it from this season itself. And we've seen in the NFL, anybody can beat anybody. We see upsets all year long. And I think what it kind of leans to, Marver, and we've kind of stumbled onto this, is we've been talking about what we're looking for coaches. We've been talking about what we want when it comes to philosophy. But one thing that nobody wants to talk about, and it's kind of the elephant in the room, is when it comes to the age. And you mentioned it earlier, Paulie, about Jim Caldwell. It's like, is that going to play a big factor in this? Is the age of a coach? Because I think we all agree, there are times where you need innovation and you need a youth movement. But I think there's also something about leadership, about being there, about being able to handle the pressure, about understanding situations, clock management, player management. And that is something only experience can get you. So while I'm open to finding if you can find the next Sean McVay, but I guess for you guys and for anybody listening, how much is age going to have to do with it?
Who are the 2 coaches that made the Super Bowl the most recent?
Yeah, Andy Reid, and who else? Bill Belichick, you start going down the list?
And then Bruce Arians.
Yeah.
All of them are over the age of 70, or at least in their latter years.
What do you think, Devin?
I mean, definitely, I think experience plays a key factor here. You know, me and Paul are White Sox fans. We know the thing, if they try to bring in a guy who has no experience in the coaching role, and sometimes it works with their Ozzie Guillens, and sometimes you have Robin Venturas here. And I definitely think in the NFL, experience does matter here. Older players, yeah, I think they need to go after a while. But an older coach, I mean, Pete Carroll's 70, and, you know, I mean, this isn't the best year for Seattle. And I'm not a big fan of Pete Carroll to begin with, especially as we'll discuss later with Christian right after the break. But, you know, I definitely think the youth movement in coaching, I don't think works too well unless you have the head coach or a general manager who's a guy who knows what they're doing with a bunch of youth guys they're training here. And if you want to be the playing grounds, to build the kids up, absolutely go for it. And you understand we're going to be bad for a few years. But as Paul said, this is a charter franchise that's been bad for the past 4 years now, at least.
So let me ask you guys this, and then Marver, I'll throw it to you so you can kind of answer it all incumbency. And so what if somebody like Sean Payton comes around? What if Sean Payton decides that he wants out of New Orleans, he wants a fresh start, he wants to come home, and he's not the 32-year-old, offensive guru. He's just somebody who's done it over and over again and has had some rough patches over the last few years. Marver, if you had the choice, are you even looking at the date of birth, especially if it's somebody like Sean Payton?
I'll take, like I said before, somebody that has a track record of success, and there you have one. I mean, obviously a lot of it was due to the talent he had. But I've always said, even a guy, you go back to the Miami Dolphins. I mean, I had an argument years ago, was Don Shula a great coach, or did he have a great team? So I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, Peyton, sure. I don't know that he'd want this job, but
Paulie, what do you think?
I would.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, Marver, was it Don Shula? Was it the Dolphins' talent or Don Shula that got them undefeated in 73? Or so 72. It was talent. Okay, yeah. It was the running backs, Mercury Morris and Larry Zonka, and that three-headed monster that they had back there. How much does a coach have influence on it? I think eventually the Belichicks and the Andy Reids and those guys are going to age out and they're going to be gone. And then you have to find a younger guy eventually. I think age and experience will play a factor in this, but I say take a chance on a Raheem Morris or a Josh McDaniel or someone that, has already managed a team before, went back to being a coordinator, and now is, gotten more wisdom over the years to be better at this if they get this opportunity again. Those are the guys I'm looking at.
Would you guys, as Bears fans, after the Matt Nagy experience, and I guess this is the best way to lead it to a break, right? Make people think about it. Eric Bieniemy, are you willing to go back to that tree? Are you willing to go back to that organization? Are you willing to go back to the Andy Reid, under his wing of guys, under that family tree of coaches? After the Matt Nagy experience, if you're this new, whatever this Bears regime is going to be up top, are you willing to do it one more time? Because that's somebody that's been with Patrick Mahomes, big moments, he's called games, but do you get scared that you get fooled again?
Was there that much of a drastic improvement in Mahomes' play or the Chiefs' offense between Matt Nagy and Eric Bieniemy?
I guess the Super Bowl, right?
And it goes back to my thing is like, as much as I love to take a chance on these guys without head coaching experience like Bieniemy, it still is exciting to get a guy that's been there before and someone that you feel a little bit more comfortable with, a guy that's been there before versus the learning curve again.
Marver, what do you think?
Oh, thinking about it. Okay. I'm thinking. I named Bieniemy among others. I mean, some of these offensive coordinators I like. I mean, steal the guy away, take it from Green Bay. I think an offensive coordinator would be a good choice, an existing coordinator, or the guys that have been coaches like a McDaniel.
Is that because
those are all good choices?
Is that because of Justin Fields, though? I mean, if they already had an established quarterback that was a veteran and didn't need an offensive coordinator as head coach of the team, would you be willing to have a defensive guy that was just better at managing both sides?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think their defense is actually pretty good right now. Even with Roquan Smith being the leader of it, really for years to come, hopefully. I think their defense doesn't need to be managed as much as their offense, personally, right now.
And I think it's going to be something we're going to be covering this entire offseason because it's not just going to be about what the front office is and the rest of the roster. It's how they're going to interact with Justin Fields.
Exactly, and that's just what we need. We need a guy who's going to work with Justin and develop Justin. I don't want to Rex Grossman 2.0. I got that jersey hanging up in the closet, Paulie. I don't want to bust that out again. See if he wants the coaching job. Hell, I'd give Marver a visor. And that's not a stab at you, Marver. I think you do better than Matt Nagy, but Matt Nagy set the bar so damn low. Hell, the four of us could do this.
And it's going to be interesting, this entire show, as we start really breaking this down. We're going to have a wonderful show because we have Christian Simpson joining us today. He is from the Daily Blitz. He covers the NFL better than anybody else. And it is a fun one. The family meeting normally here, but they'll be back in 2 weeks. So we have the honor of filling those big shoes here on the Sports Cubicle.
We do have some big shoes here. We're going to go to break. It is currently 14-7. Oh, wait. It is a field goal. It is 17-7. Yay. Seattle. Don't cheer yet, guys. We'll join Christian Simpson when we get back right here on the Sports Cubicle. Make sure you stay clocked in. And welcome back to the Sports Cubicle. Thank you for staying clocked in with us. We really appreciate it. It is 17-7 going into the half for the Chicago Bears. So let's have a little palate cleanser. Let's dive away from the Bears and go into the rest of the NFL. And I can't think of anyone better to join us than the Daily Blitz's Christian Simpson. Christian, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be on.
Thank you for joining us as always here. Now, this Bears team, it is garbage here. Paul, why don't you ask Christian about your Raiders right now?
We would going straight to Raiders. Chris, man, my Raiders are probably not going to make the playoffs with the 7-7 they got right now. Barely holding on against Denver. I think we're going into a season where we're getting a coaching change because I don't think Rich Bisaccia is going to be the answer out in Las Vegas. What do you see from the Raiders? What's some of their biggest needs? I mean, do they need to blow it up, or do you think they got the right pieces to keep this thing going?
Well, first, I think you signed Derek Carr to a long-term extension because he's displayed a lot of leadership. He's displayed a lot of poise, and this is the best I've seen him look since 2016. He could have won MVP in 2016, but unfortunately he got hurt. Matt Ryan of the Atlanta Falcons goes on to win the award, but I'm not looking at it from a football standpoint, Paul. I'm looking at it from when things got hard. He put this team on his back, and he led them. And that's what a leader does, and he's really displayed a lot of great leadership. It goes to finding the right coach for your scheme. And I remember telling you a couple of weeks ago, young, innovative coaches are in right now. Young, innovative offensive coaches. And you look at Matt LaFleur with the Green Bay Packers. You look at Sean McVay with the Los Angeles Rams. So I think that's the direction they're going to go in. That and go get a number one receiver because Hunter Renfrow, look, he's good, but he's not a guy that could take the top off his own. He's the closest thing I've seen to Wes Welker with the route running, the shiftiness, the craftiness, and the ability to break away from a defender. They need a true possession receiver to replace Henry Ruggs.
Christian, it's something we brought up actually on the first half of this show about philosophy and a lot of ways that coaches are being hired nowadays. And you mentioned that the scheme in the NFL right now is heading towards the offensive side of it. Let me ask you something. Do you think it's going to be an overcorrection, whether it is the Raiders, whether it is the Bears, whether it is the Jacksonville Jaguars, whoever it is, that they're going to fall under the trap of going overcorrection, going either too far to the offensive side or defensive side? Where are you when it comes to the philosophy of hiring a coach? Is it based off of the roster you have right now, or is it something that you're planning for the future, the long haul? Where are you when it comes to hiring a NFL head coach?
Well, I'm always going to lean toward the defensive side because I'm a defensive-minded guy. But, I think from a front office perspective, you have to think about what's best for your team. And if it's somebody that wows you in interviews, then you go for that. If you're looking for a guy that can further develop a quarterback or someone who is an offensive-minded guy, take Eric Bieniemy, for an example. He should have been a head coach about 5 or 6 years ago. I've been saying it every year, and hopefully this is the year that he finally gets that job, whether it's college or whether it's the NFL, because he rightfully deserves it. So honestly, it comes down to the front office and who can be wowed by the best candidate possible.
Christian, it's just very interesting here. My big gripe here, though, is that we need to make some changes, obviously, here. And, blanking out my train of thought here, the changes here. Yeah. But definitely getting some of these older guys in this role more. And that's kind of what I feel. I'm the minority here as the youngest guy here, thinking we kind of need some experience and veterans in the coaching role in these situations here. But can you think of like a young head coach that's really, to prove me wrong here, because I can't think of any younger head coaches that have really shined in the NFL, so to speak?
I mean, Sean McVeigh has shined. You know, he won the division his first year. He's in the Super Bowl his next year. So, I mean, I think he's done pretty well. You look at Matt LaFleur, he's won 12 games each year. He's been with the Green Bay Packers. And on top of that, he has been in 2 NFC championship games. I know he hasn't won them necessarily, but he's been there. So those two right there jump right out at me. I mean, one guy I'd like to see get a job is Byron Leftwich. You see what he's done with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and their offense, and really catering to Tom Brady's needs and his skill set as a quarterback. You saw how uncomfortable Tom looked at the beginning of the year, his first year in Tampa Bay. Now, he's running the offense exactly how he did when he was with the Patriots, sending guys in motion, those small, shifty receivers, having a running back that he can check the ball down to, using the middle of the field, having Rob Gronkowski, who I think he's never going to get rid of. So Byron's another one to look for. And he played as well. So he would be a true players coach. You're seeing a lot of former players now getting those head coaching jobs. I mean, look at Mike Vrabel in Tennessee. He's a true players coach. His players love him, and he can relate to them. So when times get hard and things get difficult, he can understand that because he was one of them once before. So that can also make an immediate difference as well.
You know what, Christian? It's funny. We've been talking about Leftwich plenty of times, especially with whether or not it's the positives or the negatives of being with Tom Brady, and that has to be in consideration when you're evaluating him. But I think that for Leftwich, a lot of it is going to go down to Jacksonville. You know, his former squad, somebody that's beloved in Duval. And one of our hosts here, Marvelous One, I'm actually going to throw it to him. He's had some ideas about some guys that he really wants to see come into the leadership role for the Chicago Bears head coach. Marvelous One, with Christian on the line, can you kind of talk to him a little bit about your wants of somebody like a Ryan Day? What entices you for a coach like that?
I mean, the only thing about Day was that he worked with Fields in college for a number of years. Mm-hmm. But I was going, all for offensive coordinators, steal the Hackett baby from Green Bay. I mean, Bieniemy is a good choice. I mean, I think they need an offensive-minded coach, and there's no question. Young guys, Mcveigh, of course, jumps out as a young coach, but I don't think age should matter. I mean, like we were saying before, we got Belichick and Arians and such who are long on the tooth that are doing very well. I just want to get somebody that's going to be able to take this team to the next level. And we were talking about personnel, and that's the other question. Does it matter who the coach is if we don't have the personnel? So that's another issue.
So, Christian, hearing that, and obviously being here in Chicago on WCPT 820 AM, we know that all focus and all eyes are on the Bears, whether they're winning or losing, whether we're watching it begrudgingly or not. Knowing what you just heard from Marvelous One and kind of what we've been talking about here, looking specifically at the Bears, at the lakefront, at Soldier Field, one day in Arlington Heights, what do you think they're going to be doing for their search, and knowing Justin Fields and what's going on in the top of ownership?
They're definitely going with an offensive-minded guy. I remember a couple of months ago, it was the game after the Cleveland Browns, after the Cleveland Browns game. If someone asked me, who do you blame? Do you blame Nagy? Do you blame Pace for not putting an offensive line in front of Justin Fields? Like, who do you point the finger at? And I didn't even hesitate. I said, look, it's hands down Matt Nagy, because he's not catering to his quarterback skill set. If you look at Justin Fields, what's he like to do? He likes to move the pocket. He likes to make throws on a run. And he likes to use receipt. They're trying to turn him into something he's not, which was a pocket passer. And that's not him. They need a guy who can cater to his needs and to his skill set. And Marvel kind of said it best. Why not Ryan Day? But then again, a lot of college coaches don't necessarily succeed in the NFL. I mean, with the exception of few. I mean, Jimmy Johnson is one of them, and he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame now. Jim Harbaugh succeeded in the NFL. Say what you want about him, but he was great, I thought, in the NFL. But I honestly think a lot of teams with head coaching vacancies, they're going to be turned off slightly because of what happened with Urban Meyer and the Jacksonville Jaguars. But not every candidate is like Urban.
I wanted to bring up, you talk about the young offensive mind, but there seems to be this wave of guys that were supposed to be the hot shot, young offensive defensive mind, had their shot in the NFL, it didn't go well, and they're back to being coordinators. I brought up, Todd Bowles, Raheem Morris, Josh McDaniels. Do you think any of those guys are going to be head coaches again someday?
Well, Josh McDaniels, I think he's in the running to replace Bill Belichick when when Bill decides to call it a career, which could be very soon in the next couple of years, because Josh kind of did what Bill did a couple of years ago. Remember when Bill took the job with the New York Jets? He was the head coach for a day, and then he left to go back to New England. Josh McDaniels did the same thing. Look, took the job with Indianapolis, left, and decided to go back to New England. So I think he's going to be the successor to Bill Belichick. It's not a matter of if that'll happen. It's a matter of when that'll happen. I just give it 2 or 3 years max at the top, because Belichick's getting older now, and the game is changing. Belichick's been around football for quite some time, but sometimes coaching goes below the style of play. You see what I'm saying? So that's one thing. Todd Bowles, I'd love to see him get another job. He's learned from one of the best under Bruce Arians, and I think he'd be great for any team. Houston, I think he could get Houston's defense up and running. He could even be good for Paul's Raiders. If I'm being realistic here, I mean, he could do wonders with Max Crosby, add a couple of more pieces. Raheem Morris, I could see coaching again. So, yes, I can see all 3 of those guys coaching, being head coaches once again. But here's the thing. When you're a coordinator and you're coming into a head coaching role, you can't just focus on one side of the football. You got to be able to focus on the entire football team. That's what you hire coordinators for.
Christian Simpson joins us here on the Sports Cubicle. You can check out all his work at the Daily Blitz. Check him out on Twitter at NYSFinest90. And, of course, his Monday evening quarterback podcast, the one and only Mr. Buckets, Professor Buckets, whatever Paul calls himself, was on the show himself. So that's a lot of fun. But not just the NFL is being covered by Christian. He also covers a lot of college football. And it made me start thinking a little bit about the rookie class that we saw this year, from Trevor Lawrence to Justin Fields to Mac Jones to Trey Lance, and how a lot of these guys are going to have new coaches. If you had to kind of grade where some of these rookie quarterbacks were and who they fell to and what organizations that they're playing for, where do you think this rookie class of quarterbacks kind of grades out as we head into the final end of the season and start heading into 2022?
I mean, only one guy has really stood out, and that's Mac Jones. But then again, look at the system that he's in. They're catering to his skill set. Trey Lance rarely saw any playing time, because it seems like they're still all in on Jimmy Garoppolo. Trevor Lawrence, we knew that was going to be a struggle for him because they didn't really put much around him necessarily. Zach Wilson, we knew that was going to be a struggle for him too, but I sometimes felt they had him throwing the ball a little too much. Hand the ball off. You don't want your rookie quarterback putting up crazy numbers and throwing the ball 45 or 50 times a game. A running game is a young quarterback's best friend.
But then in a league where we've kind of gotten rid of the running back, right? We've taken away the value of some of these guys. We're questioning the Giants for drafting Saquon Barkley as early as they did. I mean, in your opinion, is it going to have to change the way we put these rosters together if we're going to put so much investment in these quarterbacks? Mind you, it's not like the Sam Bradford days where they're getting $30 million for just getting drafted and signing these contracts. But if you're going to protect Justin Fields, you have to know how you're evaluating your team. I don't think you can afford to get Tevin Jenkins and say he's going to be your left tackle and he doesn't play all season. He has back problems. The kid may be a savage, but I mean, in your opinion, knowing how Mac Jones had worked out for him, are you going to see teams completely going for flyers this coming up draft where there isn't as many high-key QB draft prospects, especially if you don't have the foundation for your organization and the roster?
So I won't say the running game is completely gone. I call running the football, I say that's the equivalent of taking a basketball to the hole at any level, because it opens things up. Like running the football, I think it's still a beautiful thing when it's used and it's executed properly, right? So that's a possibility. I think you go based on team needs, and a lot of teams are going to need those quarterbacks. So you target what you need first, and then you fill out your roster with whatever else is available, the best available on the draft board.
Christian Simpson is, as we mentioned, not just an NFL expert, but covers college football as good as anybody else. And we are heading into the big moments: Cincinnati, Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, all in it to win it. And I think a lot of people have their own opinions. And we'll kind of go on a round table. And I'll start off with you, Christian, on this one. Your thoughts of what we're going to see in the college football playoffs?
Well, Cincinnati and Alabama, I don't think it's going to be a wash like a lot of people are thinking, because Cincinnati is a pretty well-rounded team. They run the football, and they're anchored by one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and he goes by the name of Desmond Ridder. He can do a lot in the pocket. He can throw the ball down the field. He can make throws on the run. He can get those hard yards with his feet. Him and Jerome Ford, a running back who actually once played for Alabama. I think they're going to be keys in this game, and they're going to have to play their own game. But when I look at the key matchup in this game is Cincinnati secondary against these Alabama weapons. Now, Alabama's going to be without John Mechie III. He unfortunately tore his ACL, but this is where Jamison Williams comes in, and he rises to the occasion. But the key matchup in this game, I think, is going to be Ahmad Sauce Gardner. You cannot have a nickname, Sauce, and not have game. And he's one of the best cover corners in the country. Him and Kobe Bryant, that's actually the kid's name, Kobe Bryant. They're going to be matched up against Jamison Williams and maybe Slade Bolden of Alabama. I think the key for Cincinnati, you have to get home to Bryce Young. If you don't disrupt his pocket, he's going to pick you apart. He's going to nickel you and dime you. I think Cincinnati makes it interesting, but I think Alabama wins the game, and they're going to be on their way to yet another national championship.
Are we looking at another Alabama versus Georgia, part 3?
It's possible. And you look at Georgia and Michigan. This is the one I'm most excited about because there's a lot of defensive star power in this game. You look at Georgia, they were pretty much an immovable wall for most of the year, just stingy, physical. But their secondary was exposed, and I think it's going to be key for Michigan to expose that. It's going to come down to Michigan's offensive line against Georgia's defensive front. Big Jordan Davis, 6'6", 340 pounds. Closest thing I've seen to Vince Wilfork. Just a guy in the middle that can penetrate and clog up those lanes, stop the run, and he can even push the pocket as well. But, you know, I look at Michigan, they've been able to run the ball this year. That is what has them there right now in the playoffs. They've been able to pound the rock. Look at what they did against Ohio State. They ran the football until Ohio State could stop it, and ultimately they couldn't. And they did the same thing against Iowa in the Big Ten title game. So Hassan Haskins, I think, has to be key for Michigan. They're going to have to run that football and move the chains on first and second down. Get a lot of short yardage situations, because the worst thing you want to do against Georgia is get into long yardage situations against a stingy physical defense. And for Georgia, I'm watching Zamir White. Kind of reminds me of Clinton Portis when I watch him. Just a guy, hard runner, can bounce outside the tackles, can run in between the tackles, catches the ball out the backfield. He's going to make life easy for Stetson Bennett. I think this is going to be a hard-hitting physical game, and I'm ready for it.
We can't talk college football without talking about Notre Dame and some of these teams that didn't make it into the tournament. And I'll start off with Marvelous for this one. I'll let our guest Christian Simpson kind of digest some of it and let his expertise go in it. Marvelous one, when it comes to college football and the playoffs, 4 teams, what do you think? Do you think we need an expansion? Did Notre Dame have a legit argument that they should have been one of the Final Four teams? What do you think, Marvelous?
Well, they had a good argument, but they lost to Cincinnati. And that was the reason Cincinnati's in, honestly, because their conference is not that strong. Tulane, Tulsa, no offense intended. But that's why, because for all you SEC haters, it's going to be Alabama and Georgia in the championship. But be that as it may, Cincinnati had a tremendous year. They didn't lose a game. And again, who did they play? They beat Notre Dame, and that was the deciding factor, 4 versus 5. I'd like to see an 18 playoff, honestly. But the problem is that you don't want to keep these kids away from their academics too long.
No, you hit it on the head, Marvelous. What Paulie Dangerous? What do you think? 4 teams. You saw what happened with Notre Dame. I mean, obviously, we always want more football. And like the Marvelous one said, we could take away the notion of classes and whatnot. Your thought, actually, of should there be an expansion?
Well, yeah, absolutely, there should be expansion. But I think when you compare Notre Dame's 1 loss to Michigan's 1 loss, and Michigan State was kind of a aberration in that loss, that schedule for Michigan. Whereas Notre Dame lost to a playoff caliber team. I think I would have rather seen Notre Dame in instead of Michigan. But how could you not have the Big Ten represented when they were the strongest that survived, beating a really strong Ohio State team that landed at number 6. So yeah, I mean this is the argument you're going to have every every year with a 14 playoff is there's always going to be who was left out, what was the controversy. Maybe I'm biased and would prefer Notre Dame over Michigan. Maybe I grew up in a Notre Dame household, but at the same time, there's got to be an expansion. I think maybe even 6 teams, 8 teams, 10 teams, 12 teams. There's a way we can get that done.
Before we throw it to Christian, so after he's kind of broken this all down, he makes us a little bit smarter to analyze this. Devin, what do you think? Do we need expansion? Did Notre Dame actually have a argument to be in the playoffs?
I believe an expansion needs to happen just for the big thing of money makes the world go around here. And Notre Dame is a team that's going to draw views here. And I think, honestly, if you do this, not only do you get revenue for the channel, you give these kids more chance to grow. And, let's be real here. How many times do we know a guy that, their college career was decent, but it was those clutch championship games or those clutch, playoff games when push came to shove that really got them that draft spot in the league. And I'm not saying the talent will be gone if they didn't have it, but I'm just saying if you really want to, give these kids more of a chance, see how they go when push comes to shove.
Christian, what do you think? You've heard the roundtable here on the Sports Cubicle. Should Notre Dame have had an argument into the playoffs, and should there be an expansion?
Notre Dame would have got in if Cincinnati lost. That was the one domino that I felt they needed to fall in their favor because Cincinnati did what? Beat them in South Bend, of all places. And that's a tough place for a road team to go and get a victory. They would have been in if Cincinnati had stumbled. But once Cincinnati won their conference title, it was all but said and done right there. I do agree that the field does need to be expanded to 8. I've been saying that for years. You have your 4 conference champions, and then you have 4 at-large bids, like wild cards. How there's 3 wild cards in the NFL, something like that. I think that's just going to make life easier because there have been too many teams over the years who have been undefeated or who have had that one loss, and they're on the outside looking into the bracket.
Yeah, Central Florida. I think, and that window is already passed, but I think Central Florida is one of those teams that got messed up by, what else do they have to do being undefeated through a season and still don't even get into the playoff?
And we're not even taking to effect, and Christian, you've been covering this over on the website, is all this, whether it's college football when it comes to the committee making the picks, and then you're taking the X factor of COVID. And you're taking the X factor of a lot of these kids are being pushed back. This game's happening in January. A lot of weeks of potential exposure. Christian, in your opinion, how big of an X factor is that going to be in the playoffs? Knowing that these teams are going to be mixing and mangling and whatnot, and then we're going to be into this new season, this flu season, this Omicron season. What are your thoughts? How much is it going to get infected and affected by this coronavirus and these playoffs?
It's going to be huge. I mean, this is something that's been hovering around all of us for the last 3 or 4 weeks and whatnot. But hopefully teams can just continue to stay socially distant. They can wear a mask. They can keep getting tested when it's available to them. Rapid testing at that, so they can find out those results within 15 or 20 minutes. That's the only thing that could happen. But COVID will definitely play an unfortunate factor in a team being able to play on the biggest stage or not.
What would it mean for Harbaugh to win a championship for Michigan? We got a lot of Blue fans here in Chicago, a lot of alumni who went to that university. What would it mean for the Big Ten after everything that's happening to the SEC for them to have that moment of a big win for Jim Harbaugh?
Oh, it would be huge. I know he's had the weight of the world on him since he took the job at his alma mater in Ann Arbor, and he's had successful years there. Let's be realistic. He's had double-digit winning seasons. He's been to a couple of New Year's Six Bowls. The only monkey that was on his back was he could never get over the hump against the Ohio State Buckeyes. And what's he do this year? He gets over that hump. He gets that monkey off his back. They win the division. They get to the Big Ten championship. They win the Big Ten title for the first time under Harbaugh. So the sky is the limit for him. I think it would be absolutely huge. I think he's one of the best college coaches in the country. His players love playing for him. And remember what I just said a couple of minutes ago. He's a former player, so he knows the ins and outs and the ups and downs of the struggle of being a football player. He knows how it feels when you win, and he knows how it feels when you lose. And this will be absolutely phenomenal for him to win a national championship, and I think it'll turn a lot of the doubters into believers. I think he's kind of silenced a couple of those haters, but you still have those people talking and whispering from the sidelines while he's in the games playing.
All right, Christian, before we go back to break, I actually read a very interesting article in the Chicago Sun-Times talking about how the Bears will only trade 3 first-round draft picks for Russell Wilson until Pete Carroll uses his veto clause. And as they're facing Russell Wilson this week, it does make me interested. And the article's titled, Bears couldn't trade for Russell Wilson. Was it for the best? And I'm curious, do you I'm personally, I don't know. We need to see what Fields can do. But do you think this was the best decision to not get Russell Wilson overall for 3 first-round draft picks in exchange?
Look, I would have went and got Russell Wilson. He's a Super Bowl caliber winning quarterback. He's one of the 5 best playing the position when he's healthy. He's played in big games. And the Bears need a leader. He would have provided that leadership for them. In order to get somebody big, you're going to have to give up a lot in return. And I thought that was appropriate. But then again, these head coaches know a little bit more than me.
Christian Simpson, Daily Blitz. He covers the NFL, NCAA football like a blanket, and of course the host of the Monday Evening Quarterback Podcast, and the website has amazing work. Christian, as we're about to let you go, anything for the people here in Chicago listening to the Sports Cubicle, our friends who are staying with us here from the family meeting, any articles that you're working on as we head into the final week of the season, anything that you're excited to preview of this NFL, the end of this NFL season?
I just want to see who is going to really take that step as far as positioning themselves for the playoffs. Like, you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, I think they've won that division. They were just completely dominant against the Baltimore Ravens. And when do you hear about quarterbacks thrown for 500 yards against Baltimore? It's very far and few in between. I will be previewing the college football playoff matchups that we just discussed, so that's what I would say. I'm excited and looking forward to previewing. We're almost at the finish line, and then the real season starts for the NFL, the postseason. Who's getting the SoFi?
It's going to be fun. Christian Simpson is a wonderful guest here on the Sports Cubicle. If you are joining us right now, normally we're on 9 to 10 here on this very station, but you can always check out the digital work. Christian's amazing guest. Christian, Daily Blitz, thank you so much, my brother. We appreciate it. Enjoy all the games.
Absolutely. Happy holidays to you guys.
Happy holidays, buddy.
And, of course, thank you for joining us. And, again, the family meeting will be back within 2 weeks, guys. So, please, don't worry. We'll be here for hour 2. Give us a call, 773-763-9278. You want to talk NFL? You want to talk NBA? You want to talk MLB? Hell, we got it all here, right here on the Sports Cubicle. Make sure you stay clocked in.
The Rewind Sports 60 channel on Roku. Watch us 24 hours, 7 days a week, around the clock on the new TRS 60 Roku channel. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and the TRS 60 app. The new TRS Roku channel, your round-the-clock sports and entertainment channel. If you miss any portion of the show, be sure to look out for the continuous replay broadcasts on Roku. Don't forget to check out our website, therewindsports60.com. Lock it in.
And let's go again. I think you know we're here in the basement of WCPT 820 in Chicago. And if you're tuning in like, where's the family meeting? Don't worry. They'll be back in 2 weeks. But right now, Eric Grant and the fine folks at WCPT, they let us run the show. This is the Sports Cubicle, if you haven't heard of us. We've been on for about couple months now. We're usually on from 9 to 10, and you can catch a replay of this show. And if you're listening to the replay right now, hi, how's it going? Why are you up so late? Go to bed. What would your mother say right now? But we are back here, and we got a fun second hour here. Paul, you got a little baseball list you're going to tease with us, right?
Yeah, coming up in the second half of this hour, we're going to talk about the top 10 games that were played in Major League Baseball season in 2021. If you guys got thoughts on that, call us, 773-763-9278. We'll talk about that and a list of other topics as well this hour.
Now, Mercado, if there's people that are they're sleeping at 9 p.m., so they're not listening to our replay here, and if they want to see those ugly mugs, except for you, I see you got that beautiful smile and that glorious Fabio mane. How can they see our ugly mugs and your beautiful smile?
That's right. Currently, we are live on WCPT 820 on Facebook, but if you've missed any one of our broadcasts, check us out on any of all the major podcast platforms at Mercado Airwaves Network, and of course, at WCPT 820 on SoundCloud, and on YouTube, youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. You can see why I always always choose to see these three beautiful men, Dan Marver, Devin Tingle, and Paul Chivari.
We're also on the Rewind Sports 60's Roku and Fire Stick channel and Rewind Sports 60 app. There is no excuse not to listen to the show if you're a sports fan.
Basically, it's all good news, but some of the good news ends right there. I don't know about you guys. One of the things that kind of ruined this Christmas season was being excited to see the Chicago Bulls play basketball because for some reason, the NBA decided that they shouldn't have been on Christmas Day. You know, third largest market, 6 NBA championships, Michael Jordan.
In hindsight, though, it ended up being a good thing because the Bulls are a little banged up right now.
And why is that, you may ask? Because Adrian Wojnarowski tweeted this out, that Chicago Bulls guard Lonzo Ball is now entering COVID protocol. So this team has been ravaged by COVID. The interesting thing is, and I think it also shows why they were able to bounce back. We saw DeMar have some monster games. We've seen them be able to handle this rift. This team was fully vaccinated. So I think this team did everything they could to prevent any type of lag, try to prevent any type of downfall, because here's the thing we all know, right? These guys are all Ferraris when it comes to the type of athletic ability they have. 2 weeks off of not running is different for these guys jumping into an NBA game. So for them, I think for a lot of them to be asymptomatic, for a lot of them to be able to get some workout in, whether it was by themselves, I think it's really big. And the emergence of DeMar DeRozan in this NBA season, when he was lost in San Antonio and obviously being replaced by Kawhi Leonard in Toronto, completely changed the way these guys were looking at them. And I think that's why this Bulls team has been able to survive a lot of the COVID scare, because they have professionals. Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley built a team that has been able to handle these adversity. You look at somebody like an Alex Caruso, he's an NBA champion, played under LeBron James. All hustle. Think about how he's changed the vibe of this team. Lonzo Ball, for all intents and purposes, did everything he can. Was the shining star of avoiding COVID. And why? Because he said it, I'm all about basketball. And what has he done since he's gotten into this team? Filled every need that this team needed. A ball distributor. Somebody who's going to play defense and who's going to hit an open three every once in a while. And then obviously Zach LaVine, we lost him earlier on because of the COVID protocols, but talking about a guy that has taken a next step coming back from the Olympics. So I think, Marver, when you hear this news, you've seen it with DePaul University after the amazing start that they had, kind of COVID running rampant and just savaging not just all sports, but even here close to home. What do you think?
No, I mean, I was going back to watching the games that I like. I was at the Hall of Home DePaul games in November, and then the one loss they had was to Loyola on December 4th. They played Duquesne, which is their final home game so far, on December 7th, beat UIC, and then Louisville on the road. They're 9-1. Now, I was looking forward to a big test at Northwestern on the 18th. Didn't happen. And now they've lost 2 home games, which was in their favor to have that schedule. The first 2 home games of the conference season, Creighton and Seton Hall last week. I mean, actually, it's an unknown. I mean, 2 years ago they started out with I believe 9 wins and ended up winning 3 conference games. So I was really looking forward to seeing what happened this year. Javon Truman-Liberty is definitely a pro prospect. He's in his 5th year. He's a graduate student. He started at Valparaiso. He's a Chicago kid from Young
and nephew of Marcus Liberty.
Right, exactly. And Brandon Johnson is a graduate student too. They got him from Minnesota. He was at Thornton Fractional South, aggressive, a rebounder. Those are the keys. They have they have all the pieces. But I was interested to see how they do in the Big East because, like I say, 2 years ago they had this moment of greatness and then took a big dive. So, but the COVID thing it's unbelievable. I mean, we're looking at the 9th of December, for example. Everything was clean. Then the 16th, I was going to a high school game that was canceled. My daughter's a high school coach. Her game was canceled. So right in there, which is just like 10 days ago, and then of course the NBA, the NHL took a pause over the Christmas weekend. And the scary thing is these players are tested all the time. They're all vaccinated. They're not symptomatic, but they're testing positive and they have no symptoms. So that means maybe in the general public, we're seeing people that we're passing by that are going to pass this Omicron without knowing they even have it. That's the scary part.
And it's funny you say that, Marvelous One, because what sport has literally gone on standstill is the NHL. The NHL has completely stopped, and a lot of that is because Canada and how they've attacked the COVID-19 virus. But, I mean, when you see and how this Omicron variant is so contagious and how sports are handling it, when you see how DePaul started, when you're watching U of I, Northwestern, and then, heck, even the pro sports team. Marvelous One, I'll start with you. Are you worried about how these leagues are going to be able to bounce back, if they're going to be able to bounce back in these next couple of months?
They've already been demonstrably affected because whatever momentum, shall we say, the team had, and the games that were going to be barometer games like Northwestern DePaul, for example, going into the conference season, are not going to happen. Plus, they haven't played together. Maybe they haven't even practiced together if they're sick. But unfortunately, this is reminding me of when we were about to go into the 2020 March season, when the IHSA didn't put a halt to everything right at the sectional level, and there was no March Madness, and the baseball season didn't start to July. It feels the same way. Hopefully, it won't be the same thing, but that's the way it feels to me. It feels exactly the same as March-July 2020.
And a quick update for anybody who's listening to us and not braving this Bears game. The Chicago Bears just gave up a touchdown. It is now 23-14 late in the third quarter as Gerald Everett catches a Russell Wilson touchdown, about to be 24-14. And Marvelous, you bring up a lot of interesting points about the way this COVID is going to run through sports. And I guess, Paulie, we'll go to you. You watch a lot of international sports, and you've seen how that's been affected. Are you worried about how a lot of these teams, whether it's the Bulls, whether it's U of I, DePaul, how they're going to come back from stoppages from the virus itself?
I'm worried about that. I'm worried about, like you said, international sports. We've got a Winter Olympics coming up here in a couple of months. I'm curious as to how they're going to try and pull that one off. I follow soccer pretty closely. Only team that was canceled, or only game that was canceled in the Premier League today, though, was the Liverpool versus Leeds, because Leeds had COVID cases. But I mean, I think you're finding a lot of that, and I think you're not getting a true sort of judgment as to the competition level with these teams because of the COVID depleted rosters. You guys were talking about the NHL. I'm looking at the Toronto Raptors basketball roster. They're completely decimated tonight going up against the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have problems as well. So I think, hopefully this is just a wave that's during the winter like we saw last winter, and that it'll die down a little bit. But, we still need to see how the vaccine is going to react to Omicron. We have to see what the next variant is going to be, if it's going to be a weaker or stronger one. And, I think I'm bracing for if we are going to have another total shutdown like Marver was talking about 2 years ago. And I don't think it'll happen unless it gets way worse than it is now. And I mean, you look at it now. The state of Illinois had, I think, a record-breaking day for most new cases in a day, and you're still not seeing total shutdowns of anything. Yeah, we saw Chicago has the vaccine mandate in certain spots, but, it's not like a total, all-or-nothing sort of approach by the local government. So I'm curious to see what happens there, but I think with all of the lost revenue of 2020, I think that most of the powers that be that aren't in a governmental position are going to want to see these sports games played through. Sure, we might go back to seeing smaller crowds, perhaps, or socially distanced crowds, but I don't think we're going to see, March Madness ending, or an NHL going to a bubble, or, the NBA going back to Disney World, that sort of thing.
I mean, I'm with you, Paul. Actually, I'm against you, Paul. I think a bubble might be what we need at this point.
I'm not saying we shouldn't do a bubble. I'm just saying I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, do you think, saying that, like wanting it for safety reasons, do you actually think, though, the NBA, the owners, will do some type of bubble?
If it gets to the point where it's so bad, maybe for the playoffs, probably. I think it depends. Like, yes, you want the fans, you want the revenue, but here's the thing. If you get a bunch of players sick, do you want to play in the NBA if, like, you're going to risk, this whole, look, I got on my computer screen NBA COVID tracker.
Yeah.
There is only one team that has only one case of COVID, and that's Chicago Bulls. Everyone else has at least 3 or 4.
Yeah.
This is not good. And we need to be, we have player unions. It's like, take these guys' safety seriously here. Yes, Omicron is more contagious and not nearly as dangerous as we are learning. And at CPT, we encourage you, get the vaccine, get boosted, wear a mask, do your part. We can all get through this together. Don't be like that guy who was on the air before us. I had to throw there. I'm sorry, not sorry. But again, we need to really take care of the safety here with the players here, because if we're going to continue to go to sporting events like we like to, guys, it's going to come to the point where we're going to have shorter crowds, or we're going to be going back to watching, no crowds in there, and that's just not what we need here. But one thing I do want to mention is me and Mercado, we're the only guys here who like pro wrestling. In WWE, all the wrestlers have to be vaccinated. They tour the country, and how many COVID cases have they had this year?
Yeah, it's an X amount of number, and some of the guys and gals that did get test positive were the ones that didn't want to get vaccinated before it became a mandate for the WWE. And we're seeing that for a lot of production companies. We're seeing that for a lot of sports leagues. But what I think is also interesting, and something that we need to pay attention to, and we've seen it especially in the NBA, is testing. Not just them doing testing, but how much due diligence and how in detail are these tests? Because you look around and it's like, how can so many teams not have any COVID cases, especially in the NBA? And then all of a sudden, when testing became a little bit more regiment and people were testing even more, that's when we start seeing the cases. And it goes to what Devin was talking about, the contagiousness of this one. And I think for a lot of people, they get uncomfortable because we're in the holiday season and life has been so affected the last 2 years because of COVID. But to go in blindly, not thinking that this is going to affect your sports world, it's going to. Look around. The Bulls in Atlanta have a date, I think, on Tuesday. That game is going to be all COVID because Trae Young is not playing. Collinson's not playing. Like, this is a team. This is a world we're living in right now. When we do get to the endemic, hopefully COVID is just a cold. Right? Like, that's the goal. That's the point of all this. But right now, we're in uncharted waters, and we're heading into wild card weekend. We're heading into the college football playoffs. We're heading into past NBA on Christmas Day. The games matter now. These guys need to get paid. Contracts, TV matters. And I think for a lot of people, they're not taking this serious because they hear, well, it's contagious, but it's less deadly. But that's still going to keep Travis Kelce out of the game for Kansas City. Now, as a Kansas City Chief fan, that isn't something huge.
Well, what's going to happen if they have to move a playoff game? We saw earlier this week what the Raiders moved to a Monday night game, and then we see what Washington and Philadelphia moved to Tuesday. Seattle versus the Rams moved to Tuesday. What's going to happen come playoff time when you're expecting to sit down on a Sunday afternoon and see your game on Fox or CBS, and it's not there, and now it's got to be on a Monday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday in the middle of the week? I mean, you're going to lose television revenue having a game like that in the middle of the week versus Sunday.
Marvelous. As you cover DePaul, do you think that when we get to tournament time, whether any Illinois team makes it or not, whether DePaul is the number one seed, do you think we get a true March Madness this coming up year, knowing what we know heading into January 2022? What are your thoughts?
Well, talking about the NFL, last year they got through the playoffs completely as scheduled on Sundays and Saturdays and without incident, remarkably, when the situation was actually worse. So I'm hopeful about the NFL. In terms of the colleges, I mean, I feel a little differently because in the colleges, they're in the same place. They're in the same physical space more often. I mean, obviously the NFL players don't live together, kind of like the college players do. So that's my concern about that. And, of course, last year they played the whole NCAA in Indianapolis, so that could happen again, possibly. But I think there'll be a tournament. And I hope it will be at all the various sites. But that's the only thing that's going to happen. They might have to go to Indianapolis again like they did last year. And it's just unbelievable to me that we're in this position now. I assume that what was going to happen is the Omicron, being not as deadly, would not be as big a problem as it's become. But right now, it is. I mean, you have every team, except for the Bulls in the NBA, has several players that are affected. Teams are canceling right and left. I mean, even the University of Wisconsin basketball team, they got a replacement opponent, and then they got, for the team that was supposed to come in, namely, and then Ryder, and then they got George Mason, and then Wisconsin got COVID. It's like a spiraling a little bit out of control in terms of the sports world. So I think college may be more affected than pros for the reasons I stated.
And we're all being affected by it now. When COVID first came around and that we went through the first lockdown, it was a rarity to know multiple people that got COVID. And now at this Christmas season, this holiday season, we all know people who got this variant of it. So this idea, and I understand where Marver and a lot of people are coming from, where the first variant of this that we were first exposed to seems so much more deadlier because it was. And I think that's what's frustrating for a lot of people is that they hear that it's less contagious and that essentially, like, we could overcome this, right? Like, that's what a lot of people's thoughts are. But Marvelous brought up an interesting point. When you're at the United Center and there's 22,000 people on there, that's where the X factor comes in. Because it's not just that the players that have to be responsible, it's the fan base. And I think that's what's really interesting to see, how fans are able to kind of process this. Is, what am I willing to do? What am I willing to sacrifice? What am I willing to help out for my team? Am I willing to go to, like Marvelous said, to go see DePaul versus Northwestern if anybody can get sick? And it's like, and even if it's not as deadly, you're still testing positive. You're still going into protocol. And I think that's what a lot of people, it's the same thing with concussion, right? In the sense of the way they do concussion protocol. You could get, quote unquote, your head just ringing bells, right? You're still going to the protocol. You might not see the next game next week. So I wonder if organizations are taking this seriously. I wonder if they're worried that they're going to lose some star players. I mean, I think that's what a lot of teams have to start taking into consideration is, and next year is going to be the big thing. What is the time period to allow a player to come back from COVID-19? What is it? Is it 2 negative tests? Is it asymptomatic? What do you guys think?
I think it's different from league to league, but wasn't it 3 negative tests for NBA?
Yeah, Marvelous one. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go with high school. Right now, they're doing 14 days, for example, for a lot of high schools. You know, Gilbert North had the COVID come out, after, I think it was Monday the 19th, I'm going to say. And so the tournament, all these big tournaments, Pontiac, Wheeling, all these high school tournaments starting this week, there's at least, seems like one team at least is pulled out of every single one of them. If you'll see, if you look at the Sun-Times, Michael O'Brien, the guru of high school sports, is tweeting every 5 minutes there's some other team that's dropped out of a tournament. And that I was looking forward to. I'm big on the Christmas tournaments in the high schools. I love them and I like going to them, and they didn't have them last year, and now they're spoiled this year too. But the protocol in high school is different. They stay out longer. College, like you say, is what it is. And the tests for the pros, they have to have 3 tests, positive, the negative, in order to play again. I mean, it's crazy. It's craziness.
And it's going to be interesting to see how everybody evolves from it. But let's kind of now take this onto the court. And let's talk a little bit about what the Bulls can do with this in their horizon. This is a team, second in the East, 19-10, have an MVP caliber player right now in DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine even coming back from protocols. This is a team that's getting their guys back. And seeing how the NBA, we're seeing so many teams have to fill up their roster. They have to find ways to get guys healthy. Can this Bulls team, in a COVID-ravaged season that's not in the bubble, can they be a legit title contender? I mean, I honestly, and this is just my opinion, I think they're a conference championship contender that can maybe ease back into a finals appearance. But in this NBA, I don't know who's going to be available come May and June.
Well, the way I got to see it is, terrible sounds, is a lot of their guys are getting COVID early on. So, I mean, it might be the sad point where, that the herd immunity that one crowd loves to, praise might actually hit the NBA to the point where so many NBA players get it that it's just done here. But the thing is, I do see the Bulls. They're in second place right now. If it wasn't for Brooklyn being so damn good, I think they'd be in first. And of course, we were flagged with COVID protocol injuries. That's what I call them, because they're essentially an injury. Yeah. But I do think the team has a lot of potential here. My big gripe with the Bulls is they always seem to lose to those teams that they should not lose. Teams like the Detroit Pistons and the Rockets, who have I'm trying to find their records now, just
yeah,
these are not teams. A team that's in second place should be losing to.
Bum slayers. You want the Bulls to be bum slayers. You want them to go out there and be competitive against the good teams and beat up on the bums. But, Paulie, you hear this, and, this is one of the teams that you actually root for in the city of Chicago. That you got some
one of the few left.
Few left. That's really true. Your thoughts, knowing, as even Devin brought up, that this herd community might be the thing. They're already fully vaccinated.
Well, until the Sigma variant comes along, and then we have to get,
Don't you start.
But that's true, though. I mean, you talk about the herd immunity. And it's, everyone was saying that, I got the vaccine. How can I get it now? And this is just a more contagious, less deadly variant. And the man versus virus battle is going to continue on and on, like you were saying, until hopefully this is just a cold. Hopefully we have the inoculation that just makes this just something minor that you might get in your life and then move on, something like maybe chicken pox or something like that. But we're right in the thick of it. We're right in the middle of it. We're taking it day by day and how it's affecting sports. And with the Chicago Bulls, yeah, they clearly are an exciting team and have the talent to win a championship. I think we are officially in the post-LeBron James era of basketball.
Interesting.
Where maybe we're not. I mean, I get it. Are the Lakers going to win it this year?
Yeah.
I mean, they're banged up.
And 37 is 37 playing in the NBA. He's more like 40 with all the miles he has on
him. And look at who the defending champions are right now. Did you ever think in your lifetime you'd ever see the Milwaukee Bucks? This is pre-Giannis. Pre-Giannis. Did you ever think you'd see the Milwaukee Bucks as the reigning champions? And the fact that we got two random teams like the Bucks and the Suns who weren't necessarily the favorites going into it, getting to the final. If it's a banged up, beat up, rock'em sock'em playoffs, yeah, I could see the Bulls coming out of the East.
Marvelous one. Can the Bulls in this COVID ravaged season, everything being told with the introduction and being part with DeMar DeRozan, Alex Caruso, Zach LaVine stepping up, and the way the East and West have played out, can the Bulls be a title contender?
They can be, but I don't know if in a 7-game series they're going to beat Brooklyn or Milwaukee. Honestly. So that's my, or Boston even. That's my concern. I don't know that they be able to get to the finals, but they are definitely a playoff team. But I don't think they'll go deep. That's my opinion.
I think it's all matchup dependent at this point. And like we've been saying this entire edition, the special edition of the Sports Cubicle, as we, take care of the house. We're housekeeping for the family meeting, and we appreciate WCPT, the entire staff, and of course, the amazing people over at the family meeting for letting us spend the holidays with the amazing audience here today. And it's going to be fascinating at the end of all of this that the Bulls are going to be in the thick of this. And I don't know whether or not they can win a finals, but I do know this way. For a long time, the Bulls were, you talk about empathetic, nobody cared. And right now, they have a legitimate shot of making some noise. And if you're the Bulls, and I think all fans can see this, if there's a move to be made that makes them that much closer to being a title contender, this front office is going to do it. Whether they actually win everything, whether you win, in my opinion, the toughest championship in Chicago, title number 7, post Michael Jordan for the Chicago Bulls, who knows? But I think, unlike the Bears, they have the proper people in position to win this. And if you're a sportsman, I really want to know the audience's thoughts on this, because this is the first time the Bulls aren't just, well, you got to get through LeBron James. It's like there is no LeBron James. Milwaukee can be got. Mm-hmm. We've seen Giannis get eliminated in the first round. Do you believe in Philadelphia? Nope. It's like Brooklyn's a good team. Are you going to put your basket on Kyrie Irving coming back to play for them? It's like there is Miami, sure, but has Miami lived up to the potential since their bubble finals appearance? It's like the East is open, and LeBron James is a 40-year-old man, a 37-year-old with 40-man-year-old miles in the NBA.
I think it'd take the Knicks and the Bulls right now, and I think those are the two teams out of the East that I think people slept on going into the season. And I'm not saying the Knicks or the Bulls are going to make the finals and represent the East, but I think it's not as easy, like you were saying, as it was. It's not LeBron. It's not the favored teams that were going into the season. Think of how many people said that DeMar DeRozan was like the worst signing in the offseason, and look at it now.
MVP caliber player right now specifically for the season.
Did you see the Bulls Instagram post on Christmas Eve? It was Santa's naughty list, and it was like number 1 was anyone that said DeMar DeRozan was bad. Number 2, just barely, you could barely see it hanging over the stocking. It said Knicks fans.
Well,
and then the Knicks Instagram responded like, well, Merry Christmas to you too.
It is definitely a Merry Christmas to all of us, and we continue the Christmas spirit on this edition of the Sports Cubicle, a special edition of the Sports Cubicle, because on the other end of this break, the one and only, the Paulacious one, is going to give us MLB's top 10 games. And of course, it wouldn't be Hack Radio unless we did our favorite Xmas movies. It is Dan Marver, Devin Tingle, Paul Chivari, myself, Mike Mercado, in a special edition of the Sports Cubicle.
And make sure you call in 773-763-9278. We would love to know what you think is your best game in MLB, or what your favorite Christmas movie is. If you're not a sports fan here, we cater to everyone here, and Hack Radio, as Mercado called us. So stick around. Listen to the Sports Cubicle on WCPT 820. And welcome back to the Sports Cubicle. Thank you so much for spending this Sunday with us. And yes, you're probably going, this isn't the family meeting. They're out. They'll be back next in 2 weeks. Don't worry. But the good folks at CPT and at the family meeting, shout out to Eric Grant, Richard Shue, and Tressa. All fine people. They will be back. Don't worry. We're not taking their spot permanently just this week. If you like what you hear, you can listen to us from 9 to 10 every Sunday night on over here at WCPT. And our Chicago Bears, they got on the board. I mean, it's 24-17.
Yeah, they sniffed the end zone and settled for a field goal.
There's 10 minutes in the fourth quarter left, Paul. We got what's going here. We got a great show here, a great second half, I should say. And Paul, it's Mr. Baseball Weekend Journal, the Paulacious one, Mr. Professor Buckets. Please, you got a little baseball list for us, I believe.
I do. From the basement of the, not even the basement of the basement, from the basement.
We've moved up.
And don't worry, we'll get you back to the Raggedy Russ bucket in a couple weeks here, for you family meeting fans here. But yes, I have the top 10 games of the 2021 season. This includes regular season and postseason. I suppose I could include spring training, but I don't think there's ever been a spring training game that make the top.
We're going through the barrel for that one, and I think this is going to be a lot of fun for a lot of people, because if you're new to the Sports Cubicle, Paulie Dangerous is, we talk about covering a sport like a blanket. This guy does it every single weekend on the Baseball Weekend Journal, and if you're new to us, we also put up a lot of digital exclusive content, including a lot of baseball talk that's going to come down the wire with the entire lockout and whatnot. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. Check out, if you've missed the entire show, we're on WCPT SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/WCPT 820. Give us a call at 773-763-9278 to make sure you can debate Paul's top list. And if you miss anything, we're all over the universe on all major podcast platforms, Mercado Airwaves Network, and of course, youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. And without further ado, we got one more present under the tree, because number 10.
Number 10 is kind of up to you guys to help me determine what should be number 10. But we know that the talk of the season was Shohei Ohtani. And when you think of Shohei Ohtani's 2021, what games stick out to you?
Definitely the home run and the strikeout when he was the starting pitching. He was the starting pitcher of the game, and he had a home run the game that he was the starting pitcher for.
Oh, he did that a few times.
The first one.
The first one against the White Sox.
Yes,
on Sunday Night Baseball.
Let's do this right, though, Paulie. Number 10.
Number 10 is Shohei Ohtani. That was one of the games, you could say, the first Sunday night game, I think it was April 4th, against the White Sox. Shohei Ohtani becomes the only person ever to hit a home run with an exit velocity above 100 miles an hour and throw a pitch that was 100 miles an hour in the same game. But I also thought maybe the All-Star game, with him being the starting pitcher and the leadoff hitter for the American League. And on August 18th at Detroit, he goes 8 innings pitched, gives up 1 earned run, just a home run to Willie Castro, but he hits his 40th home run of the season, gets the win. I thought that was his best overall performance of the season.
Marver, Shohei Ohtani, have you ever seen anything like what he did this past season?
No, and I remember Babe Ruth back, when I was young, but not since then.
Number 9.
Number 9 happened on October 16th. We got a playoff game here, the Los Angeles Dodgers at the Atlanta Braves. It was a base running gaff by Chris Taylor in the top of the 9th inning, ends that inning for them, and then Austin Riley gets the game-winning base hit RBI to score Ozzie Albies. Atlanta takes game 1 in that series against the Dodgers in the NLCS. That's number 9.
Number 8.
Number 8 is a regular season game. It was Memorial Day weekend, the Friday night. This year we thought it was going to be the San Diego Padres and the Los Angeles Dodgers fighting in the NL West. But this year, the San Francisco Giants had a dominant year, and it was still early in the season. They go to Dodger Stadium to start a 3-game series, and it goes back and forth. Buster Posey hits a 3-run homer in the 8th inning to take that lead 5-2. But then down to their final out, Austin Barnes comes off the bench, pinch hit 3-run home run, ties up the game, only to lead to Albert Pujols, who crushes it to left field, but Mike Tauchman robs it at the fence. It ends up going to extras. San Francisco ends up winning that one by a score of 8-5, but that was an exciting game of the season, as it showed that these two teams were legitimately the 2 top teams in the National League.
Number 7.
Number 7 is all of the no-hitters of 2021. There was 9 official no-hitters this season. 11 if you go unofficially, because of the 2 ones that were 7-inning no-hitters. I ranked them, if you care to hear how I ranked them.
Number 11.
Oh, my gosh. We're not going to do the sound effect for that.
Just real quickly.
List them off.
Number 11.
Right. Number 11 was the unofficial Rays combined no-hitter on July 7th. That was only 7 innings long, so it doesn't count. Number 10 was Madison Bumgarner with his 7-inning for the Arizona Diamondbacks Diamondbacks. Number 9, we start getting into the official ones. Our own Chicago Cubs with a combined no-hitter against the LA Dodgers coming back in June. Number 8 was the Milwaukee Brewers with their combined no-hitter of Corbin Burns, who was the NL Cy Young Award winner, and Josh Hader, who's I think also the top reliever in the National League this year too. They combined late in the season, I think it was August, for a no-hitter against Cleveland. Number 7, also a no-hitter against Cleveland, Wade Miley of the Reds. 6 was Spencer Turnbull of the Detroit Tigers. 5 is Corey Kluber of the New York Yankees. 4 was Joe Musgrove of the San Diego Padres with the first ever San Diego Padres no-hitter in team history. 3 was John Means of the Orioles. 2 was Tyler Gilbert of the Arizona Diamondbacks with his first career start in the major leagues. He becomes only the 3rd player ever to get a no-hitter in his first career start. First one since the 50s, second one in the modern era since 1900. But the best one of the season was another local one. Carlos Rodon, who was a hit toe away from a perfect game. He ends up walking on a hit by pitch, or bringing a base on a hit by pitch, Jose Ramirez, after he plunked him in the top of his toe. And Rodon gets the no-hitter, the best one of the season.
Beautiful no-hitter, and shout out to Carlos Rodon, who earned a big contract, and honestly, that was somebody who went through a lot of craziness and adversity, and to see him bounce back that way was beautiful. But I want to get this from Marvelous one. Marvelous, is it a no-hitter if it goes 7 innings, or does it have to go a full game?
Well, I mean, I think it should be considered a full game. But the other thing that I consider this year is a pitcher should get the win in a 7-inning game. If you go, 5 in a 9-inning game, you probably only have to go 3 or 4 in a 7-inning game.
I've always thought there was it should be 4. Yeah. You're right. It should be 4. Should make the game official. But I think in a 7-inning game, it still has to get to the 5th inning to become official.
Yeah, look at us.
So I thought that was not fair either. But I've always thought that it's kind of ridiculous when they try to find the guy that should get the win, some guy that pitched like 1/3 of an inning or something when the team took the lead. And, the neck and the bottom half of the inning is ridiculous.
Where was this when we needed to stat Matt Clement's numbers about full games?
Right.
Number 6.
Number 6, we go back to the playoffs. We go back to the NLCS. It's game 2 between the Dodgers and the Atlanta Braves in Atlanta. This is where we saw Eddie Rosario really start to step up. He became the MVP of that series. He ends up getting a walk-off to give the Braves a 2-0 lead in the series.
Number 5,
the Milwaukee Brewers at the Atlanta Braves. This was a series-clinching game. Freddie Freeman breaking the tie in the bottom of the 8th inning with a home run, just a blast to left center field. And then shutting them down was Will Smith in the 9th inning. The Atlanta Braves advanced to the second round. We all know how their story ended this season, but they knocked out the Brewers in my 5th best game of the season.
Which brings us to number 4.
Number 4 is the only one from the World Series that I included on this list, the Houston Astros at the Atlanta Braves, World Series Game 4. This was a really turning point in the series. Jose Altuve was just carrying the Astros on his back in this game, a chance to tie up the series at 2 apiece. But in the 7th inning, Dansby Swanson and Jorge Soler go back-to-back to take a 3-2 lead, and then the bullpen closes it out for Atlanta. This was also another big point in the series for Jorge Soler, who was the the MVP of the World Series. He hit 3 crucial home runs in that World Series. This was the 2nd out of 3 that he hit, and that came as the go-ahead home run in Game 4.
Where do the Braves, especially this season, this edition of the Braves, where do they rank when it comes to surprise teams that have won a World Series?
I don't think it's that high. I mean, maybe I'm saying that because I predicted them to win, and it was a different team than the one that I thought at the beginning. I don't think it was a total surprise because I think of just how deep that team was and how depleted everyone kind of was limping into the end of the season. I think, I think the 2 right teams made it. These 2 very same teams last year were 1 game away from facing each other in the World Series last year, so I think we got the right teams this year.
Number 3,
we go to the National League Division Series Game 5, ending on a little bit of controversy as Wilmer Flores strikes out Max Scherzer, getting the save in that one. How weird is it that Kenley Jansen, the reliever, is the winning pitcher in this one, and Max Scherzer, normally a starter, is the closer in this one? But an exciting Game 5. One of these teams had to make it to the championship series. It was the Dodgers defeating the division champion San Francisco Giants, outlasting them in that exciting Game 5. It was a really close series. I could have picked picked another one, too, that was a real pitcher's duel. This one itself was a pitcher's duel as well. I think the final was 3-2, if I'm not mistaken, in that one. But I think the controversy also kind of pushed it up a list a little bit, too, and that was why it was number 3 for me.
Number 2,
a winner-take-all NL wildcard game that was looking like it was going to go into extra innings, but a 2-run home run by Chris Taylor of the Los Angeles Dodgers helps to knock off the St. Louis Cardinals. We all know what happened to the Dodgers. They end up getting into the next round. They end up knocking off San Francisco. They get all the way to Atlanta, which we saw on this list. A lot of Dodgers on this list, but they found themselves on both sides of a lot of good games this year.
Honorable mentions.
Oh, we're going to do honorable mentions before we get to number 1.
Yes.
So some that stood out to me, and this one I think fell under a lot of people's radars, but go back and check it out. Red Sox and Rays played this back-and-forth battle on Labor Day. Chris Sale, fresh from coming back from injury, I think it was like his 3rd start of the season, had a good first inning, but then struggled in the 2nd and the 3rd inning. It really goes back and forth. Rays end up coming out on top. I think it was like 9-8 was the final, but at one point in this game, I think they were down like 7-1 or something like that in this game, but had to battle back to do it. I thought that was a good one. June 30th, Trey Turner hits his 3rd cycle of his career, but this one happens to happen on his birthday, and it also happened in a Washington Nationals uniform before he got traded a few weeks later to the Dodgers. I thought that one stood out to me because it's just a special game. I was listening to that one live, and it just kind of felt special as I was watching it unfold. We go back to the playoffs for my final honorable mentions. October 19th, another NLCS game, Atlanta at the Dodgers. NLCS Game 3. It's a 1-0 game. Evan Longoria's home run is the only home run scored. Actually, no, I think I'm confusing that one with a different one. It was, I think, Justin Turner in that one that hit the home run. But either way, you get the point. It was a 1-0 game. I love a good pitcher's duel, and that was another one from the NLCS. Another one from the from the ALCS, the game 1 between the Red Sox at the Astros. Astros went ahead in the 7th inning on a Correa home run. That was a good one. I think it set the tone for that series. It was probably the only close game in that entire ALCS. 2 good teams, but it showed, I think, Houston, their dominance and why they ended up in the World Series. And last but not least, in my honorable mentions, another NLDS, San Francisco at Los Angeles. That was the pitcher's duel. I think Trevor Rogers might have been on the mound for San Francisco. That was the Longoria home run that was the difference in that game. And that leads me to
number 1.
Anderson. Back at the wall. The White Sox win.
The dramatic, the picturesque, the Field of Dreams game. It went down every way Major League Baseball wanted this to go down. It was a game that people that don't even like baseball were talking about the next few days. And of course, it ends in dramatic fashion as the White Sox, who blew the lead in the top of the 9th on 2-run home runs from Aaron Judge and then Giancarlo Stanton, come back and have to fight down to their final out, getting, was it Sebi Zavala getting on base via walk, and then followed by the top of the order, Tim Anderson, crushing it to the corn in right field. 9-8, White Sox are the victors in the first ever Field of Dreams game.
As we said, we were on the air this day back in the Real Sports 60 day, and that was such a cool moment. It felt like a movie.
It was a movie. It literally felt like somebody was directing it.
And Mike Mercado, my co-host sitting to my left, was right that was probably the World Series moment for the White Sox in 2021.
Ouch.
And I would suggest for any baseball fan that you soak in this amazing top 10 games list of Paul Chivari here on the Sports Cubicle, because we don't know we're going to get baseball back anytime soon.
Yeah, but I'm still pushing out content. Baseball Weekend Journal. I'm talking a lot about Latin America going on right now. Puerto Rico just had to kind of shut down their season and restart with a different revised schedule. I think the Dominican is in round robin play. Colombia, Venezuela, I talk about that. Mexico, I think, is starting round robin soon. And they'll all meet up with their representatives in the Caribbean series starting in February.
He's one of the best to do it when it comes to not just his radio business, but when it comes to baseball specifically. Paul Chivari, Baseball Weekend Journal. Make sure you guys are checking it out every single weekend. Marvelous one. Before we get to the holiday spirit to finish off this special edition of the Sports Cubicle, what are your thoughts on Cubs having their version of the Fields of Dreams games next year?
Next year, yeah. I mean, it won't be as good as this year. It couldn't possibly be. But I think that that when they were picked, I don't know if they knew that their team would be so depleted as it is. I mean, for the Cubs, they went from that no-hitter you mentioned, and the next day they started their long losing streak, which changed everything. It did. I mean, they were in the race the night of that combined no-hitter, honestly. And then they lost a bunch of games. What was it, 11 or 30? I can't even remember. And then the fate was sealed by Rizzo, Bryant gone. So, but as a diehard fan, it'll be good to see them in the game. But it's not going to live up to 2022 can't possibly be as good as that game.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. They'll make it a little bit more interesting if Marcus Stroman and Carlos Correa are in Cubs uniforms at Field of Dreams, but we'll have to see for that one. We'll be up to date with it.
I don't know, Mercado. Sequels are never as good as the original.
Terminator 2 and Godfather 2, but that's not the movies we are talking about here on the Sports Cubicle because it is the holiday season, and in order to bring it all home, what you got, Marver?
I saw Spider-Man. That's a good sequel. I just saw it on Friday.
Attaboy. There we go. And we know pop culture, guys. But speaking of pop culture, speaking of movies, of course, in this holiday edition of the Sports Cubicle, a special edition, I thought it'd be fun to kind of end the show not talking about the Bears as they are losing to the Seattle Seahawks 17-24 with 3 minutes left as they are on defense. But we could talk about Christmas movies, some of our favorite Christmas movies. And the one and only Devin Tingle was able to do a little bit of research for us. Obviously, there's normal Christmas movies. We'll talk about our favorites. But you got something that's a little bit more pertinent to what we're talking about.
Yes, and first off, 773-763-9278. Colin, we want to know your favorite Christmas movies. But I found the top 10 holiday sports movies as of last year. If anyone can guess number one for me, other than Mercado, who I told, before the show, I'll give you $1.
Oh, the whole $1. So let's go around the table. What do you think, Paulie? If you had to guess a movie that is a Christmas movie, that's a sports movie, I don't think you're going to get number one.
It's not Die Hard, is it?
Die Hard is a Christmas movie, but it's not.
Sports-related Christmas movie.
Sports-related. Yes. What, like Air Bud helps Santa deliver presents?
Here's the thing. I will go through the first one. Number 10 was Mystery Alaska.
Oh, okay.
And then number 9 was Slapshot. Number 8 was The Mighty Ducks.
Wait. Okay, these are just sports movies, though.
Sports holiday movies, according to this list here.
I don't remember the Christmas scene in Slapshot.
I think it's because it's
Die Hard. Which is why Die Hard is a sports Christmas movie.
Yeah, Die Hard is more of a sports movie than Slapshot is a holiday movie.
I think this is why Disney's Miracle is number 2, because it's about hockey. And I think
that didn't take place at Christmas. That was Lake Placid in January of 1980.
But we also have Cinderella Man on here, which is another movie that had took place around the Christmas season here. So this is what we reach for, guys. We're going to make Die Hard a Christmas movie. These sports Christmas movies have to make one. So Paul, Marver, each take one guess what this best holiday Christmas sports movie.
I'm going to take Slapshot on the list because that's the best sports movie.
That's on
it. Okay. So it's not even on that list. Well, I call your whole list into question.
It's a questionable list.
I mean, didn't Rocky have a scene where he's eating turkey by himself, with his goldfish? Right?
Paulie, you got it.
You owe me $1.
Rocky 4.
Rocky 4. Okay.
The hero avenges the death of his friend
Merry
Apollo
Christmas,
Creed.
Paulie.
Merry Christmas, Paulie.
Happy birthday, Paulie. Yeah.
In a boxing match on Christmas Day with Rocky celebrating a win. I am a man of my word. Let me reach into my pocket here.
So for all those who are wondering, the scene that solidifies this is when Rocky's son is sitting in front of the television. He's like, "That's my dad," after he just beat a Russian.
Yeah, on Christmas Day, on Christmas presents without his dad. Yeah.
So let me ask you guys this, and to the listeners of the Sports Cubicle, you better give him that money since our bosses don't.
It's got tape on it. It's sweaty. I think a corner's missing. If this was a trading card, this would not be mint. This wouldn't even be near mint. It'd be passable.
Well, if Marver would have gotten it, he would have gotten a nice clean $1, but
because he got him a digital $1, he probably would have Venmo'd him or something.
No, Marver fought a leopard for us. For we could have a nice Christmas leopard here.
Let me ask you guys this: what makes it a Christmas movie? Because I think we just talked about a Die Hard. A lot of people say
place at Christmas.
Takes place at Christmas, right? You can't just say because it's snowing or because it's winter, it's a Christmas movie. This is my ultimate argument when it comes to Die Hard. He doesn't go to get back to reconcile with his wife unless it's the holiday party. He goes specifically because it's Christmas. He's trying to save his marriage. It's not he's going for the 4th of July. It's not that he's going for Valentine's Day. It is Christmas Day, the Christmas party that he is going to. The reason why there's nobody at the plaza is because it's Christmas Day.
Stronger argument for Die Hard than the movie I'm going to bring up, but kind of the same premise. Castaway. He leaves a Christmas party to go get stranded on that island. Now, that takes place over a long period of time, whereas Die Hard's one night.
It's one night,
which makes sense, you know, like, and that's why, like, we were going back to, like, Rocky. It's like, it's a whole span of time, but I'll count Rocky 4 because it does culminate in a Christmas Day boxing match. So you can kind of do that. I think we're kind of opening up the parameters a little bit, but at the same time, I think Die Hard has the strongest argument to be a Christmas movie that's not traditionally supposed to be a Christmas movie.
Well, then is Nightmare Before Christmas a Christmas movie, or is it a Halloween movie, or is it a hybrid? Because the movie starts at Halloween but ends on Christmas. So is that a movie in which you could play December 25th, or is it only for October 31st?
I think you play it from October 31st to December 25th.
Yeah, it's a Christmas story.
I mean, I never see ABC. I never see Freeform play. They always play for their 31 days of Halloween, but never on their 25 days of Christmas. So maybe it's not.
The mouse has said so, huh? But that is a Christmas Story. Overrated, underrated, or the best?
Christmas Story, good every now and then. I think like playing it for 24 hours on Christmas Eve is a little extreme, excessive. But at the same time, and it's been a while since I've seen it. I owned it on DVD during that era. I mean, but at the same time, overrated, no, but at the same time, I could see why someone would say it.
It's my favorite Christmas movie, and I'll explain to you why in a second. Devin, your opinion on Christmas Story, though?
I mean, Paul, they don't play it 24/7 anymore. They stopped that, I think, this year.
I don't have TV. Why would I?
I checked at TBS yesterday, actually, and it was not on. So it was on other channels, once, but not too much. And if you want to say that, just don't watch Christmas Story 2, please, for the love of God, do not. But I mean, it's kind of like what we talked about with Field of Dreams last year. It's that cheesy, classic, campy family movie that, it's like, how do you not at least somewhat like it,
I think a lot of it for me, and I know it gets repetitive, and it's very cheesy, but it's the reason why Paul and I talk about it off air about The Simpsons, when The Simpsons are at its best. It's all about family, and the family loves each other, and it's all about little moments that we all could relate to, and A Christmas Story has a lot of that, from getting the gift you want, from the gifts you don't want, from swearing in front of your dad, from lying to your mom that your friend came up with a swear.
Having to wear the dumb clothes that your aunt made for you.
And you see like the little... how the mom knows how to avert the dad's attention one way, and also how the dad knows how to like get away with stuff. It's just, there's so much wholesomeness in A Christmas Story. But Marvelous, when you hear us yabbering about this one, when December 25th comes around, the family's all together, you guys got the food ready. What is a Christmas movie that you guys like to watch together?
The one that I watched, we're going back to Babe Ruth times, I guess. It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
1947. Ruth died in 48, by the way. But I mean, that for some reason it's every time a bell rings, teacher said every time a bell rings, the angel gets its wings.
And Babe Ruth got his rings the next year.
Yeah. But I mean, as a film, that one holds up. Even taking the Christmas part out of it, that was like one of the top 10 films of the American Film Institute when they put out their first list.
And for you, Marvelous, when you see that movie, what kind of what emotions does it bring up? Is it something that you relate to the kids, or is it something that's more personable?
It's because of the banking connection. Won't close us down today. 5-4, and then Potter, love Lionel Barrymore, and sentimental hogwash. Yeah.
We got Marver.
It reminds me of people. Of certain people I've met in my life, I think.
I can relate very well.
I think we all can, especially in this building. But I think for a lot of us, it is what brings the best about Christmas movies, about holiday movies, is it's the purity. It's what we all have, the idealism of it, of, love thy neighbor, love the neighborhood, be festive, be kind to one another. And I think this was a fun way to kind of end our first of 2 special editions of the Sports Cubicle here on WCPT, as we fill in for the great people of the family meeting, and they will be back. Trust me, we know we can't fill those shoes for much longer, but we are glad to hold down the ship for a while as they are enjoying the holidays, and we hope that each and every one of you has enjoyed this holiday edition, this Christmas edition of the Sports Cubicle. And as we kind of wrap up shop, anything you guys this holiday season has caught your eye, anything that made you a little bit joyous, whether it was sports related, life related? I mean, it's there this time of season, all the craziness that we've seen because of this virus and all the, from the political world to the social world, all that. Anything joyous this time that you guys have had, whether sports or life related?
Paul?
I've appreciated Christmas music a little bit more, and I think that's because I didn't rock it from like Black Friday all the way to today, but you were asking me the other day when we were working together, top 5 favorite Christmas songs, and I had to really think about that and go through the art. And as soon as I'd make a list, a new song would come up, and I got back to you later in the day once I thought about it, and it just made me think of, I don't hate Christmas music. I mean, there's a lot that I could do without, but there's some really good Christmas themed songs, and I've kind of reappreciated that a little bit.
Did the kid have a good Christmas?
Yeah, he did. He gets spoiled left and right. I got some cute pictures of him in a gift bag. He just there's this giant gift bag, and his cousin was like, we got to put him in the gift bag, and we did, and he just didn't want to leave. So it's like him standing in the gift bag with his cousins and his brothers all standing around him, and that was the family get together this year.
Devin, what has had you enjoy this holiday season?
That we got to fill in for the family meeting, 2 hours live of the Sports Cubicle, as cheesy as it sounds,
and us all together be nice. Marvelous one. What has you joyous this holiday season?
Well, this holiday season, I'm glad that we're still together on 8/20. And, honestly, as I hit the new year, I'm just glad to be alive. Mm-hmm. And that will be a whole nother show. I'll talk about that.
Hey, there's some people that can't say that every day, Marver. So, and you fought a leopard for us.
He did fight a leopard for us, and I am grateful for. Obviously, this is my first Christmas as a husband, so that's been great, and I've loved that. But more importantly, been able to be with you guys. Make sure you guys are staying with us all over the universe. As soon as this show ends, we're gonna be on WCPT's SoundCloud. So if you miss anything, join us there. We're also on all major podcast platforms at Mercado Airwaves Network and on YouTube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network.
2 quick things right now. Bears might have a chance to tie up this game right now. Jimmy Graham touchdown. They just got to get the extra point. About a minute left in that game. And the other thing, too, is we'll be back here next week, like we've been saying, 4 o'clock p.m. on Saturday. We're going to talk about the stories from 2021. What were some of the good, the bad, everything. Yeah. So tune in next week on January 2nd as we'll discuss some of the stuff. And, of course, always catch the replay of this show and the regular scheduled time of it on 9 o'clock at night on Sunday nights. Oh, my gosh, a 2-point conversion for the Bears.
Here we go. We'll be on here. As it's going on.
Don't here forget, we go. What are they going to call it? They call it. Bears have the lead right now as it stands. We'll see if this gets challenged.
And it's up there. We'll be waiting really fast.
We have exactly 1 minute, guys.
Yes, so at the end of this, we have the replay at 9 o'clock. Make sure you guys, we have a special interview that's going to be exclusive for the 9 o'clock edition. Sports Cubicle TV on Twitter.
Exactly. And, of course, make sure you guys stick around for Chicago Heel here as we're sticking by. But it looks like we may have a Bears win to celebrate the end here. Stick around for Chicago Heel, guys. They're a bunch of good groups.
They were supposed to lose so they could fire Nagy.
Paul, we'll get our Christmas wish next week. Or
Devin
next year.
Singo, Paul Chivari, Mike Mercado, Dan Marver. It is the Sports Cubicle. We love you.
Again, thank you for tuning into the replay of the Sports Cubicle. And as promised, here is our exclusive content you can only hear on the replay. Mike Mercado's interview with Mike Pendleton, and, of course, my Bears post-game rant. Enjoy.
Mike Pendleton joining us today. We're obviously going to plug all the work on the descriptions below of this video, and of course plug everything at the very end, because it is important that the people, the millions and millions of people, understand how great of a job you are doing covering these things like blankets, and understanding that the clock is getting close to midnight for the Chicago Bears in this season. Justin Fields' first campaign as the starting quarterback for the Chicago Bears, and what might be the end, should be the end in a lot of people's opinion, including mine, of Matt Nagy and or Ryan Pace at the same time. Your thoughts of what's been happening for one of the charter franchises in the NFL?
Well, I think Monday Night Football broadcast hit it on the head. I think it doesn't start and end on the field and on the sidelines. It starts up top. And if you listen or read or do anything in terms of coverage or just being a fan, you know that the bigger problems lie with George McCaskey and Ted Phillips. And that's really the easiest answer I can give you, right? Adam Hogue wrote a great piece, and I guess I'm going to continue to plug it. I plugged it on my own show. He wrote a great piece about why the pros and the cons into keeping Ryan Pace. He changed the football building, as he put it, up there in Lake Forest, and everything that the Bears are trying to do to become one of the more attractive franchise. They're historic. Just because you're historic doesn't mean you're attractive. As dinosaurs, how that feels. So, we're trying to really avoid the Bears falling into prehistoric times. That's what the New York Jets are for. And we're going into that. Unfortunately, we're falling into that territory. Well, we're among one of the NFL's original franchises. Yeah, and all those original franchises, pretty much besides the Packers, all suck right now. And that's just me being very, very honest and part of the fan in me coming out. There needs to be changes. Mike, I don't necessarily know if Ryan Pace needs to go. I think Ryan Pace may need a new role, but I think he needs to stay. So, and I think Ryan Pace needs a little bit more credit for finding late gems in the draft, for taking chances on certain people in free agency. Allen Robinson is one of those guys. I look at Akeem Hicks as kind of the poster child for Ryan Pace, tenure as a GM. Ryan Pace was in New Orleans when they drafted Akeem Hicks. There's these little things just looking at this year. And listen, one game on Monday Night Football against the Minnesota Vikings doesn't tell all, but Thomas Graham Jr. comes out the practice squad, earns a spot on the 53-man roster after his incredible debut. The secondary was depleted, and we thought we were going in with a bunch of nobodies. I'm not saying Thomas Graham Jr. is going to line up on the opposite side of Jalen Johnson for the next 10 years. But what I'm saying is it starts to make free agency a little bit easier when you go, all right, we're probably not coming to terms with Allen Robinson, so we got to go wide receiver shopping. Can I spend X amount of dollars in shopping for wide receivers when I probably need corners? Then you have someone tap you on the shoulder. We don't need to invest as much into our corners because we have guys like TGJ, which should be his nickname because it's so much easier to say that. But you have a guy like a TGJ, and you can really start to hone in on some of your other needs. Then you start to make difficult decisions. Does a Hicks come back? Does a Cody Whitehair comes back? Is James Daniels getting another contract? And I say all this because it's got all of those answers need to start being put in place before I can start talking to you about a head coach. Because
you're right.
I had a great conversation with David Kaplan on one of my most recent episodes, and he kind of made it known, listen, Chris Ballard was in the building and said, I want the job. And they said, what's the first thing you do when you get the job? He said, I cut Jay Cutler tomorrow. And they're like, all right, thank you for your time. We got to go. So now Chris Ballard, he took the risk on Carson Wentz, right? And Philly's loving it. They're going to get a first-round pick. It's all great. But you got an MVP candidate in the second year in Jonathan Taylor. You got Carson Wentz playing like the Carson Wentz of old. You've got a Defensive Player of the Year candidate in Darius Leonard each and every single year. I mean, I'm not against a guy like Chris Ballard being in my building, and you shouldn't be, right? But Ryan Pace was the choice. So, and then you have a coach and Bruce Arians who wanted this job, who wanted to coach the Chicago Bears. Well, thank God he didn't, because he won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, if the same decision makers are going to be in place, I can't tell you what I want first. They have a very nice running back. They have a speed demon in Darnell Mooney, and they have all the makings of what could be a franchise quarterback. And I'm gonna go a little hot take here. They also have the makings of a franchise left tackle in Tevin Jenkins. I understand his first two games as a pro have not been good. I believe 4 penalties in each game. He got in the face of the Vikings defensive players and got into it with Sheldon Richardson, cost him a big personal foul flag on Monday Night Football. But he was the only one. He was the only single person defending his quarterback. Unfortunately, the hit was legal and all of that. But you don't hit the quarterback like that. And Tevin Jenkins knew that. And when they drafted him, all the experts said, this guy's got a mean streak. He's going to go to war with your team. So he's got to work out a few of the physical things and a few of the mental things. But for a guy coming in the latter stages of his rookie year, coming off of back surgery, most people would walk away from back surgery. And he's being thrown into the fire. So, listen, there are building blocks in place. The bigger problem, and it's embarrassing when two things happen, Mike. It's embarrassing when the Monday Night Football broadcast has to tell the national audience that the problems start upstairs with people you've never heard of as a football fan. We all hear of them here in Chicago. And it's embarrassing when you're mocked on all of your biggest games. Tony Romo and Jim Nantz had a field day against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year. Yeah, the game was a blowout, and I don't know what I expected them to say. But week in and week out, when the Bears were on that number one broadcast, whether it was CBS, Fox, or Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, even against the Packers, wow, the Bears look great. Jakeem Grant this, Jakeem Grant that. by the second half, they were laughing at us. That's just what the kind of precedent is for the Chicago Bears right now.
Well, and I think this is why, and I'm glad you're bringing this much fire for this conversation with the Bears, because my biggest issue with this team all season has been how undisciplined this is, how frustratingly impatient on top of stubborn Matt Nagy has been when it comes to the maturation and bringing along a Justin Fields, being married to his play calling and his playbook, opposed to adjusting it for who the future is. You would think just as a human, right? And I actually think Matt Nagy's a nice guy in general, but we're just speaking professionally.
Well, so am I.
Yeah. And we could talk about how bad I am at my job, and I might be a nice guy, right? Like, this is the thing, right? Like, we have to be able to separate the two, because all I know is that if my job is on the line and my career is on the line, is on this kid, and I have to develop this kid, and it's on his rocket of an arm that my career flourishes, I'm attaching myself to the hip of Justin Fields. But from day one, it's been a bunch of two-way talk. It's been a bunch of hurdles. It's been a bunch of nonsense. And finally, I think a bunch of professionals on that locker room kind of started smelling it. And I think the other thing that was a tale to show you where this Matt Nagy lost this team, and I don't mean lost in the very stereotypical locker room talk, how undisciplined it is. This is not a disciplined team. This is a team that's a bunch of boneheaded plays. And here's the thing. You're not good enough to get away with it. You're not good enough to complain about referees screwing you out of a game because you're not good. Only good teams get to do that. They get the benefit of the doubt, not this Bears franchise. And I'm fascinated to know your final thoughts as we kind of wrap this up. This NFL season in general, just the roller coaster that it's been. I feel like every single week we learn everything and then forget all about it because it means nothing the very next week because the league just changes so much and it's just so many variables. What would be one lesson you think you've learned from the 2021 NFL season that can kind of correlate your feelings about the Bears too? What is just something that is just all-encompassing of the season you watched in the National Football League and that team in Soldier Field?
Inconsistency. That's everything. That's literally everything. And I'm going to take a quick rant here. And it's inconsistency in MVP talk, and COVID-19 talk, and COVID-19 protocols. And the Chiefs are very bad. Now the Chiefs look like Super Bowl favorites. Aaron Rodgers is an awful human being, and he's immunized. And how could he lie to us? To, wow, he might be MVP. To Matthew Stafford and the Rams are great. And, Matthew Stafford and the Rams are struggling, and now the Arizona Cardinals are going to run away with it. Oh, by the way, they just lost to the Detroit Lions. The only consistent thing I know is the Bears are going to lose. They're going to complain about bad calls, and John Harbaugh is going for 2. Those are the only 2 things I know for the rest of the season. That's it. Seriously. And on the flip side of things, you got fantasy football owners killing themselves inside because they don't know what's happening in the final weeks of this season because it's so inconsistent. I tell my friends all the time, you guys are horrible people if you're rooting for players, and this is in general, for fans in general, fantasy or not. You're horrible people if you root for players to get injured. Root for them to have bad games. But now COVID came around and they're like, oh man, this guy's on the COVID list. I hope he stays. And it's like, what? They're like, dude, I hope he's not vaccinated, so he's out 10 days. And it's like, but I hope my grandma got the vaccination. Like, it's inconsistency in fans too. So, man, I'm going to disagree with you on one point. Cassius Marsh did have a reason to be very upset on that Steelers game on Monday Night Football. But this, unfortunately, and I'm so glad you brought up, the lack of discipline, because one of my first piece I wrote for On Tap Sports Network for Bears on Tap was the Bears' lack of discipline reeks of Nagy. And that's really it, right? It's almost the only comparison I have for you, Mike, is back in the early 2010s decade when Geno Smith and Rex Ryan were married together. Geno Smith was bad. Geno Smith was just bad. And Rex Ryan has to be the fall guy. Rex Ryan is on his way out. It's week 17. Yes, kids, there used to be an NFL season with 17 weeks. It's week 17 in the NFL, and Geno Smith goes off against the Miami Dolphins. I think he was nearly perfect in his pass attempts. He threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. You may want to stat check me on that, but I believe I'm right. And that was Rex Ryan's last game. His office had already been cleaned out, everything. And he's probably sitting there like, oh, really? it's Christmas, so I don't want to be bah humbug over here. I want to end this on a good note, and it's hard to. But at the end of the day, Bears fans, you got a little bit of mistletoe with Justin Fields. We can all find love under Justin Fields together. We don't have to kiss, but we can all be in love under that mistletoe. We can all love each other with that. And there are people who say this kid's not the answer. And I say to you, what game are you watching? I believe the stat is Trevor Lawrence has only thrown 1 touchdown in his last 6 games or so like that. You'll never hear it. Watch Justin Fields lean down to his right to tie his right shoe, but start tying his left shoe, and people will castrate him for it. So that's the town we live in. That is the territory we come in. Mike, we didn't talk about basketball today, right? We didn't do that. Partially because I'm a Knicks fan, and you know that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
But the Chicago Bulls, you can't talk about them unless there's a Derrick Rose or a Michael Jordan conversation, and I'm not putting those two in the same conversation. But now in Chicago, we have a great team. What a great coach. What a great organization. Because those in charge got out of the way. When the Cubs won the World Series, people got out of the way. The Ricketts came in, Theo Epstein came in, and they were just allowed to do, I can't believe I'm quoting Bill Belichick, do their job, right? You need people in place who are good at their job and allow them to do their job.
Competent.
It doesn't mean
competent people.
It doesn't mean Ted Phillips needs to be homeless and unemployed, or George McCaskey needs to go live in a retirement home. And I'm not saying this because it's my thoughts. I'm saying this because this is what fans think. This is what fans think. And I may be in the 1% of people who feel this way. Ryan Pace should be back next year. For the amount of late fines that he has had in the later stages of the draft, you have to give it to him. They go, I missed on my first quarterback draft trade, and it was bad. But then for that same quarterback to come in here during the preseason, sure, preseason and preseason, but light up your team, his old team in his old stadium, and then look at that mistake and go, yeah. I know the fire is hot. I know I get burned when I touch fire. But you know what? I'm going to put on some fire protective gloves, and I'm going to go make a trade for another guy. And he may be just even better. Do I think there needs to be another football voice next to him? I do. But that doesn't mean he needs to be gone as GM.
It's going to be a fascinating offseason. It's going to be a fascinating final 2 weeks of the NFL season. I think if you're going to keep Ryan Pace, I'm going to need him to develop a better scheme when it comes to diverting money, when it comes to understanding how important it is to have some form of draft capital. But I do agree with you. He does have a keen scouting eye, and I don't think you just get rid of something like that. I do not want him being the main football voice in this organization anymore. And I agree with you. You bring in somebody who's smart, who's got connections. You bring in somebody like a Louis Riddick in some form of a football man operations to be that guy, to get you, to land you a Sean Payton or the next Sean Payton. You find somebody. I think a rock that they need to turn over is find yourself a special teams coordinator, somebody who has to talk to all the different rooms in a football office, who gets people promoted from linebackers and running backs, who talks to wide receivers. You need a CEO of the Chicago Bears, and I think that is what they need to find, and it starts from the very top. So we can have a conversation about bringing Bill Belichick in for all you want. But if you don't have the guy in the captain chair, it doesn't matter. Speaking of captain chair, he is one of the leading men who is covering MMA and now the Chicago Bears. He is one of our favorites. Gave us a bunch of times, essentially 2 whole segments on MMA and now on the Chicago Bears. The one and only Mike Pendleton joining us here on the Sports Cubicle, Sports from the Couch with Dan Marver, Devin Tingle, Paul Chivari, myself, Mike Mercado. We got more coming up next here on WCPT 820 AM.
And thank you for tuning in to the 9 p.m. version of the Sports Cubicle here. It's pretty late. Thank you for staying up for us. But since you stayed up late, you get to hear my take on the Bears today as we finally got an end score here. 25-24 win with seconds in the fourth quarter. I got to say, I'm actually impressed that Nick Foles, of all people, Nick Foles, with his whopping 250 yards and 1 touchdown, were able to come in and win this. And yeah, the run game was a huge thing. David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert both had 1 touchdown. Both rushing, for a decent amount of yards. I mean, just the run game is here. And if we're not going to fix his quarterback situation, we got to rely on the run game here. And that's not a stab at Justin Fields. If he's out for the season, you don't want this guy getting hurt. So be it. Protect your guy at all costs. But Nick Foles here, I mean, I did not think Nick Foles was going to win. I was not expecting it. But they got all this money they spent on Nick Foles, all this money on Andy Dalton. And as Paul said, this is Matt Nagy and trying to pull his thing, pull something out of his ass to win the game here. And I guess he thought Nick Foles was the answer. I didn't think Nick Foles was the answer when they signed him last year, and everyone told me I was wrong. Look how that worked out. And again, we're spending so much money on these quarterbacks that are not here and that just aren't performing well. Yeah, Nick Foles won today, but is he going to start next week? What is going to be the quarterback situation next week now? Now that Nick Foles has this win under his belt, he's got one win. One win this season. Are we just going to ride Nick Foles to the end of the season? If that's the case, signing Andy Dalton was even dumber than before. We should honestly, I say we should have stuck with Nick Foles. Why give all this money on Dalton? I don't know. We passed Andy Dalton last year because we had Nick Foles. Why do we take him now? I'm griping about things here, but the Bears team, they played a game. It wasn't so much that the Bears won. I think the Seahawks kind of just lost. I mean, that run game was phenomenal. Well, that run game was good, I should say, definitely. Khalil Herbert, that kid's phenomenal, but definitely keep David Montgomery. These two are your future guys. Don't do what the Bears used to always do until the Matt Nagy era. And we got two teams. Now, both teams are 5-10. They both have losing records. The Bears are going to end with a losing record. They can win out the rest of the season, but it doesn't matter. This team is done. It's not going anywhere. They're going to finish with a losing record. That's just it. This is what the Bears are. The Bears are what we thought they were, unless you thought they were going to be good. And if so, I'm sorry. I remember the days I was a child and I lived in make-believe land too. But as Paul said earlier today, this is a charter team. We really need to hammer it on this. And again, this season's over, but I really want to look forward to what could be next season. A different head coach, a potential different general manager. Someone who can help guys like Justin Fields, become the next superstar, become the next Russell Wilson, the next Michael Vick, if you take away the dogfighting. There's so much potential with this Bears team here. And as Marver said, it is the players more than the coaching, but I feel if you get good coaching, you're going to have a team that can succeed. You need someone who can work with these kids, but also has the experience. And there's rumors that the New Orleans Saints are going to get rid of Sean Payton. I'd be fine with Sean Payton. Then again, I'd be fine with a cat wearing a Bears visor as the head coach over Matt Nagy right now. But this season is over. It's been over. This was even though they won today, there's no moving forward. The Bears are what we thought they were. And we're just going to see. Right now, this is it. If they want to ride out with Nick Foles to get their money's worth on him that they spent, a few years, by all means, go for it. I'm not going to stop them. They're the Bears. They got money. Whatever. But this season's done. I think right now, screw it. Let Nick Foles play. Let everyone play. Heck, we're not getting anywhere. And we trade our first-round draft pick, so it does not matter where we finish, where the Bears finish. Next week, they face the Giants. It should be an easy win. But this is the Bears we're talking about. And honestly, I don't even care who wins. This season is almost over. Right now, I say, well, Matt Nagy might be gone next year. Hell, no, Matt Nagy will be gone. I'm correcting myself there. There is no finishing for this man. But with 2 weeks left in the season, there's no bouncing back. The Bears are done. They've been done, and it's just, this is it. The season's over. They won today, and it's not even exciting. I'll end it on that note. They won today, and it wasn't even exciting. Nick Foles, your third-string quarterback, who is the former Super Bowl MVP, by the way, won with seconds left, 25-24 in the fourth quarter, and it wasn't even interesting. It wasn't even exciting.